All right. We should be good now. Ladies and gentlemen of the internet, I hope you can hear me. I hope the stream is stable and not scuffed. My name is Kargoz. The date is July 11th, 2019. It's a great day to be alive. We're getting closer, man. We're sub 50 days, right? That's all I know. So
44? So wait. Yes.
What is it, 44? Okay.
Yeah, something like that. Hold on, wait. Yes. Well, actually, I'll tell you right now, we are 47 days away. 47 days away.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being here, guys. I'm very excited. I'm super excited. We got the legendary OG man himself, Skarm Tank. You probably noticed him on YouTube. One of the hottest stocks in the classic WoW content game on the show, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, we are lucky to have Skarm here today. But before we begin, GMA 25. I have to pass it to my man Defcamp because some of your spirit is a little bit low right now. I can see some of the hype is a little bit low. We need to uplift your spirits. So Defcamp, if you could hit the chat with the loud and thunderous greetings, a divine spirit. Go for it.
You guys ready? Here we go. Good morning, Azeroth! How the hell you doing, guys? We got Skarm Tank, the #1 tank in all the fucking world, down here on the GMA number 25, baby. What's going on, boys?
In the world. I love it, dude. You're now the best tank in the world, dude. Oh, man. All right, we'll do a little round of intros, man. All right, so, okay, we'll start with Skarm, our legendary guest. Skarm, how are you today, man?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Doing great. Dunedain, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great too. It's still holiday and still a few weeks to go. So
yeah.
No papers. Yeah. Dunedain's a teacher, right? So no papers. You're chilling, waking up late.
Yeah. Today I worked in the garden. I don't know. It's quite hard, but it has to be done sometimes.
Working in the garden. All right.
Yeah.
Nice. Defcamp, how the hell are you, brother?
Oh, I'm doing beautiful. You know, it's another beautiful day. We're so close to Classic WoW. Just about a month and a half, guys, and you know, the beta's ending tomorrow, and I'm kind of sad, but I'm kind of happy about that. So, yeah, I feel like the hype's got nowhere else to go except for up after this, you know?
Yeah. Maybe we can use that as a starting point. First of all, Skarm, did you get? Were you in the beta?
No, I wasn't. I actually don't have. Long story short, back in 2009 when I quit retail, I haven't played retail since then. Wow. I gave my account to a real life friend who, this was before Battle.net even. So I guess what he told me later on is he like merged my account with his or something. I didn't really care. So I haven't I don't have a copy of the game or anything. So I need to. That's partially why I didn't get in the beta. But at the same time, there's other things I was working on. So I'm like, it's not a big deal. I'll just play it. I'll collect information that other people have and I'll just play it when live comes out.
Hell yeah. You didn't miss all that much, man. I mean, you're, real quick, Brandon Silvera with the $10 donation. Thank you very much. And a Twitch Prime sub from Greskra. Thank you very much, my man. So, Defcamp, you feel a little bit conflicted about the beta ending.
Yeah.
You know, why is that, man? Dunedain's hype. He's like, finally, dude.
I'll say this, okay. It definitely was a little bit of an error. Like, I had a lot of fun, especially with this new, thing that happened with, you know, people getting, capped out at level 30, capped at level 40. It was kind of this new experience that I never had before, you know, having these, end games at level 30 and level 40. And, you know, there was definitely a time where the beta was popping and a lot was going on, and we had our little fun with, you know, our little duel tournaments and stuff that we did over on the testing realms. But, you know, I'm definitely happy that we're getting closer to the release. I think it's good, healthy that the beta is ending to allow kind of this natural hype to come around the game, you know, coming out. And I'm really glad that we didn't go to endgame, even though I would love to test, you know, what it's going to be like rating and this, that, and the other. I kind of didn't want to see that in terms of, you know, losing the kind of hype and the surprise that people are going to get doing the endgame stuff. So it would have been nice to experience what it was going to be like to raid. And, you know, I'm sure Skarm would like to know as well, what it's going to be like, you know.
That's my main concern.
Right? Yeah. But, yeah, so we'll see. We'll have to wait until we get there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yo, what is this event, though?
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Any clue?
I don't know. No idea.
No color?
No idea.
So the beta's ending tomorrow, guys. It's RIP. I don't know what time it's gone, but there's going to be some kind of event confirmed. But I don't know if anyone knows what the event's going to be.
It's the first time I've heard of it.
Yeah. People are saying there's going to be infernals in the crossroads. There's going to be world bosses everywhere. We'll see what happens. But ultimately, I don't want to spend too much time on it. Here are my consolidated thoughts of the beta. I think that the beta may have bit us in the butt a little bit when it comes to like hype. You know, we had a really huge boost of hype in the beginning, a lot of content, a lot of non-endemic creators coming into the space, making good content, streaming. So from a hype perspective, I don't know if the beta was all that great for the game, but what I will say, and more importantly, having all these eyes on the game for so long, for many months now, has probably resulted in a better game, a better quality game. More stuff has gotten fixed, more stuff has been addressed, and you know, that's good. I'm so relieved to see pets fixed. I mean, pets just feel so much better now in general, as someone who likes pet classes, and yeah, that's pretty much it. All right. Well, we have a legendary guest, so let us, if you don't mind, Skarm, we'll ask you just some of the light and polite questions so our communities can get to know you a little bit. So like we said before, Skarm makes amazing content. I mean, he makes other content too, but mainly tank content, right? Pretty much all the videos I saw was tank content.
Tanks, and just like a lot of the content almost more recently is just raiding in general. Like you could be any class, and if you plan on raiding, like these videos will benefit you.
Yeah,
cool.
Super knowledgeable dude, very educational, very chill videos. You can find him at Skarm Tank. Like you have like a lot of videos at this point. Like, and you've been up. You're already over 10K subs now. Just rising, dude. Rising, just up and to the right, dude. Really good things. So go watch his stuff.
A lot of live as well. You got some videos up on Class.
Absolutely. So Defcamp.
That's right. Yeah.
Because I'm a goldfish and I lose my attention span every 5 seconds. Defcamp and Dunedain wrote some questions down for Skarm. All right, Dunedain. Maybe someone ask him questions. Someone ask him questions.
So maybe we should just start a little bit lighthearted, right? So we can start with, what's your favorite faction?
My favorite faction, I've been Alliance this whole time. My very first character back in 2005 was Horde, but I got to like level 20 or so, and then it turned out I had a real life friend who had a level 60 Alliance on a different server on Kill Jaden, and he was already fighting Ragnaros like before I even heard of Molten Core. So we end up me and a few other friends rolled in his server, and I've been just Alliance since. But in Classic, I'm switching over to Horde, and there's a lot of things I like about Horde, like obviously Wind Fury and all kinds of other things.
Oh yeah.
I'd say the number one reason that I'm rolling Horde is because, you know, again, my channel is focused on like tanking and raiding, which are two very different things on Horde than they are on Alliance. Because of threat and how shamans interact with the raid as opposed to paladins, it's more different than one might think. And since I'm going to be making guides, streaming, doing all that stuff throughout Classic, and if someone is like, "Hey, Skarm, I'm Horde, and I'm having trouble holding threat, in this raid, how do I do that?" I wouldn't have an answer for them unless I'd done it myself. Really, like I could give suggestions, but really, I want to feel it for myself so I can give the most accurate advice possible to people. That's the main reason I'm rolling Horde.
Awesome. That's a really good. It's kind of a selfless. That's pretty cool though, man. I like that. Yeah.
So I'm guessing you're going to roll a tank then.
Yes.
So my next question would have been, what's your favorite class?
My favorite class, it's hard to say between, and I've answered this question before, like between Warrior and Druid. It's between those two, I would say, and I like them both for different reasons. I'm actually rolling a Druid. I'll have both eventually. Probably by the end of phase 1, I'll have a 60 Warrior and a Druid. I'm rolling Druid first because, first of all, it's just a lot easier to level than Warrior, period. And in pre-raid Bisc gear, like when everyone's in blues, I think Druids are better tanks than Warriors. Maybe only slightly, but due to their, they can get manual Crab Pummeler out of Nomergon and have their Thunder Fury equivalent, really, is what that is for Druids, before they enter a raid. And they just have, like, comparing my Warrior to my Druid previous videos, my Druid has like 6,000 more health and 600 more health, sorry. But about 6,000 more armor. Actually, the armor is like 6,000.
Wow, that's crazy.
So yeah, I'm starting off with the Druid and then Warrior. So also, like when I level my Warrior, I'll have a level 60 to give him gold so he can actually buy gear. It really helps leveling Warrior if you have a level 60 to feed gear to you. Really. Yeah. So yeah.
That's awesome, dude. Going bear tank first, man. That is fucking awesome.
Perhaps making a statement by going Druid first. I don't know. I'm trying to understand this. Man.
That too.
Yeah.
Like I want to. Like I'm 100% confident that Molten Cores. I can maintain Molten Cores as a Druid like week 2 and clear it. I know I can. So I think that'll surprise a lot of people also. So that will be nice as well.
I think we will go a little bit deeper into the classes later in the talk. But maybe a last one before we go into the more Yeah, advanced stuff. So what would be your favorite race?
My favorite race. So for Horde, I'm going. Well, obviously Druid. I'm going Torn.
Mhm.
Yeah, obviously.
And for absolute Warrior, I'm going. And I have a video about this too. I'm going Torn on Warrior as well. Mainly because my priorities are tanking, PvE. Tanking and then PvP and then like DPS. Those are my priorities from most important, least important. And for tanking, Torns have the increased health, which it's not the only reason I'm taking it, but it's a nice bonus. War Stomp is amazing for trash, not only dungeons but also there's a lot of stunnable trash in raids, especially like 20 mans like ZG. It's a great talent, and the increased hitbox really, which is I think for tanking, like sometimes you'll have a mob running past you, and most mobs run like faster than the player. So if your charge is on cooldown, like your intercept is on cooldown, and a mob runs past you as a warrior, you just have to chase after it. That's the only option. And then it's going to get to, maybe a healer or a caster and maybe kill him before you get there. So as a Tauren, not only can you get to the target faster and hit them sooner, but it's possible to like taunt them before they run out of range because you have an extra 3 yards or so, or 5. I don't know the exact number. So that's my reasoning behind that. I think that will be more handy than people are really talking about.
That's
why I'm going it on.
Just to be sure, the 5% health bonus, that's on the base health, right?
Yeah, it's no, it's in vanilla. It's 5% of any health you're getting from any source.
Really?
Flask of Titans, anything. It's just 5% more health. Period. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
That's huge. That's huge.
Wow.
Yeah.
I kind of want to do a segment later, dude,
later.
where I like just reflexively regurgitate a lot of private server nuggets that you hear passed down the line about like tanking, right? And see Skarm just ripping to shreds, dude. I'm just curious if there's anything that's crazy. No what you know now. No stuff, because like going Tauren on the private servers, for example, just a small little piece of this segment would be everyone on the private servers. It started to develop into a meta where like, what, you're not going troll tank, bro? Like, what, are you insane? Like, that's the highest TPS, man. Like, what are you talking about? Tauren is for noobs, bro. Like, Tauren, who needs that? Stuff like that. But now with the 2 yards confirmed extra hitbox, I don't know. You see where I don't know if you see where I'm going with that, but there's a lot of those type of things. Yeah.
And my simple answer for the threat thing is that just for Salbeggars, who I raid with on Lightbringer, so I speed cleared Nax with, they rolled Horde on Northdale, which I never played on Northdale, but they just cleared Nax in 76 minutes on Northdale, which is a little bit lower than our Alliance record, but it's faster than anyone else still. Their main tank is a Tauren. So his name's Sketo. Yeah. He's an amazing player.
Sketo!
I know Sketo.
He's a hunter, right? Though he's a Z-Seto,
He also plays a hunter. He's just an amazing player all around.
Yeah.
I'm not on his level. I'm not trying to say I am, but the fact is that he plays a Tauren, and he can generate those kind of numbers. Well, I don't know. If I was threat's also based on, you can't really compare your threat to someone else's threat as a player because many other things have to do with it. Like, they clear content faster, so all the numbers just increase because of that. Like,
it's your guild, right? So like I'm close with Mooflake. We wrote this warrior guide with Mooflake, right? And he was saying that people like Z-Seto, the reason why he's able to get those amazing numbers oftentimes, because Mooflake has really some of the highest TPS as well, but because his guild is clearing so much faster, he can play differently. Like, everything changes as a tank. It's super dynamically, so like you're able to push those more aggressive itemization and lines of play.
It really does.
Yeah,
because a lot of the time, even with, because I run with like pugs a lot. Like, I don't always run, speed clearing things. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll just tank for pugs because I find it fun. Meet new people, this and that. So one of the things that I do a lot for tanking is that since I'm in pugs a lot, I'll put a demoralizing shout on the boss. Even speed guilds don't even use that debuff always, or sometimes never. But like, I'll do that. It's a threat loss for me to use a global cooldown hitting demo shout every 20 seconds or so. But I do it because I'd rather do it than have someone else do it, you know what I mean, in a pug setting, because it might not go up. So, but in speed clear, like when I was in Salbeggars, never had to worry about that. You trust Battle Shout to be kept up by another warrior in your group. You trust Sunders to be up, always. So, you absolutely can play differently, and it will increase your numbers in a speed clear guild.
That's awesome. And let's not lie. Like, War Stomp is such an amazing fucking. I've been playing guitar and as a shaman, and I gotta say, like, even at low-level dungeon, while doing trash, I just think War Stomp is such an amazing cooldown, such an amazing racial, especially for a tank. And you look at it, and you look at just how much you can kind of do with it, and like in like oh shit moments, if you're farming some trash or doing some trash, or whatever. I just think it's an amazing tank racial. So
it really is, because the thing is too, it's like oftentimes when you die as a tank, there's a heal that's about to hit you. Like that happens a lot.
Yeah.
And War Stomp stunning the mobs for 2 seconds, like that's enough for a healer to go off. You know what I mean?
Yep.
For you to receive a heal. I played it was someone else's account, but I played a Tauren in Nax and 5-mans for about a month, for about 4 weeks. So I have like that much experience, and the warriors are Tauren, and that's when I fell in love with War Stomp when I was playing that character. I'm like, I love this ability. I don't ever want to have it.
It's awesome.
Can I just quickly interject too on Hunter? It feels awesome having those 2 yards, bro. You feel like a sniper, fam. Like I was comparing it side by side. I had the PTR up and I was on the beta. Dude, you were really feeling those 2 yards, man. Like it's palpable, man. Like it didn't feel right on the private server after doing it on the beta, man. I don't know. I enjoyed that a lot. All right, let's keep going with the question. Sorry.
Yeah, so before the stream started, we were talking about something, and it was actually a really interesting conversation. So maybe we should go from there. So we were talking about the flat 6% crit nerf on melee, and then the 14% parry chance on bosses. So, well, I will just ask the same question. Was it there all the time? Was it there in Vanilla WoW, or is it something they came up with?
I haven't researched fully into this. I've seen like a copy of the blue post and some people talking about it. Blizzard, they claim that it's something that's been always there. So that's what we have to go off of. Whether that's true or not, it's it doesn't really matter, because if they're saying it, then they're developing the game. The reason why, like, what this reminds me of as well is back when they first announced the 14% parry chance, and they said that's always there. I saw something, and I'd have to go back and read it again, but it was something about 14% parry wasn't really talked about until like Lich King or Cataclysm, something like that, is when it started popping up on forums from what people were able to research. So it seemed to me, and then same with the 6% crit, like no one's been able to find so far like anything on at least Jerk's forums or Kurt's forums or any forums that were back from 2006. No one can find anybody talking about this like 6% crit suppression, which it might not be the easiest thing to spot. Maybe that's why they didn't talk about it, but at the same time, I feel like someone would have brought it up. And
well, Navik had a theory about that. I mean, should we? Okay. Let me first like introduce that to the chat. So, and I think I can do a decent job of explaining this to the chat, because I'm not one of the big brain vanilla players, guys. I'm like you guys, yo. Like Navik says some shit, and I'm just like, bro, what is that? Like, what are you saying, man? Like, just break it down for me, bro. Like, am I in a better spot or am I in a worse spot? So I'm talking. Ale and Navik are going back and forth, and they're talking numbers and
something too in chat. Yeah.
Hey, Navik's like, and this is divisible by the quotient of this and this, and like, but ultimately he was saying though. Okay, let me introduce the concept first. So apparently yesterday, Ale comes into the chat and he's like, emergency, blue post hype, and he comes in and he's like, guys, like this is fresh off the press. Blizzard just confirmed that there's like this blanket minus 6% crit buff. I mean debuff or something. I don't know. Basically, melee have 6% less crit. Okay, that's the most TLDR way.
Right now, though.
He's saying 3?
This is only 3%, but not 6%.
Okay, well they have some kind of reduced crit, and apparently it's only affecting melee. And Skarm is, I don't know, he was sort of referencing that, and Navik had a theory saying that maybe back in the day people were meter whores back in the day, but the meters back then may have not been super sophisticated. Maybe people weren't looking and breaking down their abilities and like looking at it at that level, perhaps, and they were just going off the damage, so maybe they didn't notice. I don't know.
Oh, it is 6, he's saying.
Oh, it is 6.
It's 6. Yeah, but the early sources were 3%, if I understand it right.
Okay. So, well, this has vast and far-reaching implications in the sense that this minus 6% or whatever is going to affect not only warrior damage and stuff and fury warriors, but it's also going to affect tanks, right? And fights in vanilla are balanced around threat. So if tanks are putting out less threat, that has implications there too. And this is something I want to ask you later too, Skarm. Like, is this going to affect raid composition moving forward? Are we going to be more caster heavy? Also, is this going to affect the dual wield tanking meta? Because more, if you're slapping the boss with 2 one-handers, you're getting parried more. You're taking more damage by way of parry haste. You're putting out less threat. What's going on here? You know what I mean? Where do we start? There's a lot to sink our teeth into, but yeah.
Of course.
Okay.
So so right now we have two main numbers. We have 14% parry and -6% crit, let's say.
Okay.
Let's say those are the numbers that will end up translating to classic.
And those are higher than private servers? Real quick.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
On private servers, a boss has about a 5% chance to parry. So 5 to
Wow.
14, that's a 9% difference.
That's a big difference.
Pretty big, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm assuming that 6% thing isn't on private servers. So let's just say it's going to be 6% less in classic.
Mhm.
Sounds accurate.
Okay.
And so those are, 9% and 6%. Those are big numbers, but they're not. It's not like 40%. They're not huge numbers, in other words. And so, judging from, I don't know how much of a threat loss, for example. Like I don't have the exact number of how much of a threat loss an additional 9% parry and -6% crit would be. But I know also there's been fights where even recently I just did fights where I'm literally, and again this is alliance, so it'd be a closer gap than horde, but I'm double the threat of the next person. I was tanking I think Grobulus and Nax the other day. Toward the end of the fight, I had over 100,000 threat. The next highest person had 50,000.
Oh damn!
Wow.
You get
I don't
wrecked,
think a 9% parry and a 6% crit is gonna make up 50,000
Yeah.
worth of. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and since threat's binary, you either have it or you don't. If I was 50,000 threat above the next person or 5,000 threat, I still have aggro either way. You know what I'm saying? So,
But is that just a Skarm unique thing? Are you just doing some crazy stuff, throwing in sapper charges and doing stuff that's far above and beyond the normal play style, or is this going to affect, just the majority of guilds in a larger capacity?
I would say I'm doing better than the average tank. Typically, I do more, but at the same time, this threat difference I just outlined, this was a Nax with other and I'm talking about the next highest person on threat. So the best DPS in that raid, or at least for that fight, was still that much below me. And there were good people in that raid with tier 3, people pushing meters, absolutely. So the difference is, it's hard to say exactly what it is. It's hard to put it into numbers what it'll be as you go lower levels, because strats change. There's so many variables. There really is. It's very complicated. But I don't think this will affect things as much as people are saying. I think it'll affect things a little bit. Things might be a little more complicated. For example, you might need to give a tank maybe another second or two when he pulls a boss, just to make sure his first 2 or 3 attacks don't get parried. But and as far as healing goes, taking more damage because you're getting parried, healers even the decent healers start to realize that you can just start casting, especially paladins because they're really mana efficient. You can be casting heals even when the tank's at full health, so you have a heal. You know what I'm saying? That's not a complicated concept.
No.
Surprising amount of people don't do it. Sometimes tanks die because healers, there aren't really any good healing assignments. Maybe they focus on the raid. There's a lot of reasons that tanks die that are easily preventable.
Yes,
By just
absolutely.
assign 4 good healers to the main tank, have them heal and spam heals nonstop.
And spam heal, so that's why you use rank 1, heal, even if nothing's going on. As a priest, I'm using rank 1 heal because it's a low mana cost, good amount of healing, good DPME, and that's a lot of things the healers will do. They'll there's a big difference between reactive healing and proactive healing. You should always be a proactive healer, not a reactive healer, especially in vanilla, especially with the way that the bashing is now. So
So here's my feedback from a non-tank player that just did this huge guide with Mooflake. So a lot of what I'm saying is just a channeling of stuff I've heard through him, right? But one thing I've learned from doing this big, warrior tanking guide that we took on is that the tanking rhythm is finely calibrated, dude. I've never seen it with healers or DPS, or I've never seen a role that has to do so much, in the sense of not only do you have to have super high situational awareness and just be thinking of a bajillion different things, where your raid's at, how your raid's doing and stuff like that, but you have to itemize on a piece by piece basis, and you're just swapping between by dual wielding, throwing on a shield, timing abilities. I've never seen a role where you have to think about so many things, right? So when you say that you don't, TLDR, it may not make or break things, right? Some of these nerfs. What I would spit back at you, Skarm, would be, what about that threshold when you can start moving from sword and board over to dual wield tanking? Is that going to be pushed further back? Usually the thing I've heard is you need a full set of raid gear, right? You get your defense squared away, you get a full set of raid gear, then you can transition over to dual wield tanking. I'm assuming with that finely tuned kind of, tanking algorithm or whatever, that point could be more affected.
Yeah, because tanking, the bottom line is with 9% more parry and 6% minus crit, tanking's going to be that much harder. However much that much harder is, a little bit, That's up to you to determine. But however much harder that's going to make tanking, that's about how much the threshold's going to be put back. Because I've said it, I think in my most recent video about when to transition to Fury Prot, is that it's like for a new really anyone who's asking that question, I would say my answer to that person is get some experience first. Get your period gear. There's no reason to really be Fury Prot and Molten Core because every single boss in there, every single trash mobs, you can taunt them. And taunt really just, it makes threat trivial because if you lose threat, you use taunt. If the tank dies, another warrior can taunt, and have that threat. So taunting really just does make things trivial in that aspect. And that's why, I think that's probably why Blizzard designed it like every raid moving forward, that the most of the bosses are immune to taunt. Makes sense.
Are you concerned that you are an Alliance player though, and maybe Horde is going to be a different story because threat is a much more sensitive thing, a sensitive issue?
Horde's going to be harder for sure, and I'm looking forward to how I'm going to deal with it.
Make sure you always have Wind Fury to help with it. Well, and one thing that I think I'm missing here too is like, so if I'm sure you've seen the beta, you've seen how numbers, especially dungeons, have been a lot easier when it comes to like incoming damage than private servers. I would say like probably like 20% or so is what a lot of people were, just estimates. If that transfers into raids and the damage, incoming damage, but yet we have this 6% nerf to crit, 9% increase to it kind of evens things out. I think a little bit when you look in the whole picture of the difficulty things, everyone was saying, oh, the raids are going to be so much more easier now on classic because if we're transferring like the data how it was in dungeons. We haven't gotten there yet, so we don't know. But if that is true, I think that's kind of a good thing because it kind of evens it out when you put these all together in the perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as if that's going to translate to raids, I would like to think that, and I could be wrong, but I would like to think as far as private server goes, when it comes to designing the raids, like the devs it's not, some people are like, oh, it's random guesswork, they're just pulling numbers out of their ass. That's not exactly true. No. A lot of it's determined off of like videos, old, logs, old video, not logs, but old videos. Because you can watch, you can see from an old video how hard the boss is hitting the tank, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so you can kind of get a good guess for that. So I don't think personally that all raid bosses on classic are going to do like 20% less damage than they are on private servers. That's a lot. That's more of an effect than 9% parry or 6% crit.
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah.
So we'll see. And if it turns out that classic bosses do hit 20% less than they do on like Lightbringer, for example, my current private server, then it's going to be have less armor, which they're supposed to have. It's going to be easier overall. We'll see.
So go ahead.
Yeah, it was hard to tell on dungeons because like as we've seen, like a lot of the dungeons, people were going in there like going on like a shaman tank with like mobs that are 5 levels higher, and it was just kind of like why am I not drinking? Like I didn't have to drink once. You know what I mean?
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy, and but it's so like, and this is like you were about to say something earlier when we were talking about the beta and how I would have really liked to see the end game rating and to see what the numbers would have felt like, because I mean, listen, I think private servers did an amazing job with the information that they had, seeing what they created with just the information they had, but it's definitely going to be a little bit different, right? There's going to be things that are going to be a little bit different, but I really feel like at the end of the day, we've been playing private servers for so long. We're all used to what happened on private servers. This happened like this. This happened like this. I think with a lot of these changes now, with the 6% decrease and 9% increase to parry, all in all, I think people are already thinking that classic's going to be easy. This and another. I think we're in for a good little change up of how we were used to things on private servers, and I think that's good. I think that's.
Would it change like the beta for DPS warriors? Would it make them less good?
It would change their the main thing about DPS warriors is that the minus crit sucks, but that's not gonna make the class worse overall, especially because the bosses will supposedly have lower armor on classic than they do on Lights Out, for example. The main thing is that now, because of the 9% increased parry, that would affect threat. Because DPS warriors, you're not going to get parried because they're behind the boss. They don't have to worry about that at all. They do have to worry about that in terms of like pulling threat. So threat might be more of an issue, especially on Horde now.
Interesting. Very good point. I didn't think of that, actually.
That is really
So, okay, there's a couple things here. Some good questions coming in the chat right now. So one guy's asking about the impact on druids real quick, and just I know some people have just joined the stream in mass. We're talking about a potential 6% kind of blanket minus crit effect to melee in general. I don't know if it's physical, if it's affecting druids in the same way that it's affecting warriors, if it would affect hunters in the same way. I'm not sure. Do you think that's going to affect any of the classes differently, Skarm?
I think it will. At first, I still think druids will be better tanks, just because the difference between having manual crowd pummeler and everyone else having blue weapons is, I can't tell you how big that is. It's
huge, right? Yeah.
Huge. So huge. I think though that the parry and the minus crit will affect druids more later on. However, this is strictly for main tanking. Like if you're getting parried a little more and you're critting a little less as an off tank, where threats either not an issue at all or not much of an issue, that's fine. You know what I'm saying? Like druids aren't going to get really hit any harder than they are currently on private servers, and with their huge health and armor pool, even if they get crit or crushed, I can't talk. Crit or crushed occasionally.
Yeah.
Even if that happens, it's not the end of the world. Like especially like we talked about earlier, if healers are on top of the ball and they know what they're doing.
So a couple super stupid simple questions for you. I'm getting a sort of vibe from you right now, Skarm. I could be off base here, but Fury Defiance dual wield tanking still on the table, still going to be viable. Nothing is broken. Okay.
Nothing's broken. It will probably take a little bit more personal tanking experience and more, a little bit more gear maybe, and maybe the healers will have to be a little better than they are now. But it's absolutely not off the table. It's still going to be a viable and I would say optimal option at certain levels.
And the next thing I'm going to ask you is, let's say you are a skilled, talented player. This isn't your first rodeo. You played a couple private servers, right? You've done your thing. You're not like, the boy wonder, but you're pretty solid. And this person is going to ask you, genuinely, and you believe in their capacity as a player. They say, Skarm, man, I'm thinking of main tanking as a druid. What do you say to that person?
I would say yes. Just see, druid, actually playing a druid, once you're in the raid and you have all your consumables and your buffs and manual crowd pulmers in your bag, tanking as a druid is a lot simpler than on a warrior. You stay in bare form and maul and keep fairy fire up and maybe swipe, and that's it. You don't have to really worry about defensive cooldowns because they don't really have any good ones.
Yeah.
Which is a weakness, but it's less that you have to worry about as a player. So yeah, I would absolutely say, to answer your question, if a player like that asked me, can I main tank as druid, I'd say yes, absolutely. Do what you need to do. This is what you need to do, but you can do it.
Something we were finding out too is we were testing yesterday with how HOTS played effect into rolling HOTS. So we did a bunch of testing, me, Thermo, my brother Meldron, into what actually happens if I were to pre-hot a tank going into combat. So effectively, if I and you, Skarm, say you're tanking, you have 50% health, I put Renew on you, you run into combat, I stay out of combat. But what works is as we know in raid bosses, as soon as you encounter a raid boss, everyone in the raid is already in combat. Remember, they fixed that back in the day because people were staying on in combat and rezzing and shit like that.
I remember doing that, yeah.
So essentially, you do not want to pre-hot, which you didn't back in the day. You really don't want to pre-hot because that threat will automatically put you in combat. And if I were to pre-hot you running in and you started combat, all the other mobs that say you missed whatever, that threat would go right to the healer. But essentially, a druid pre-hotting themselves is still huge, like with the amount of threat that would actually help them, because all that a druid pre-hotting himself still is very good and adds a lot of threat to the target.
Yes.
So as soon as he pre-hots himself, runs in there, all the mobs immediately will go to him because of that he's the only threat essentially on the table. So I think that's another added thing that really helps druids a lot.
It is. In my very first, I'll tell you this story real quick. In my very first video on YouTube, it's my druid tanking the Abomination Wing and Nax. This is something my very first week of this guild, we were doing Gluth, which you run through this like toxic tunnel where everyone's taking not a lot of damage, but a little bit. And then you drop down the pipe and you encounter the boss and everyone's in combat immediately.
I remember this video. Yeah.
Yes. And the very first week I was in this guild, there was a warrior assigned to tank the boss. I was brand new. And I was hotting people. I wasn't really thinking. It was my first time in Nax as druid, actually. So I was just hotting people without really thinking. I knew not to hot people. I knew how the fight worked, but I just turned my brain off and I was hotting people. And the boss went to me. The main tank tried to dual tank to get aggro, but he wasn't. There's ways to go about it. He wasn't doing it correctly. It's a little complicated. He died right away. He pulled aggro and just died. And then I got the boss and we killed him. We didn't wipe. So the next week after, they're like, oh, Skarm, why don't you tank? That was pretty cool what you did. So I just, I put rejuvenation on like 8 or 9 people, as many people as I could. and I dropped down, went to bear form, and as soon as combat started, I had like 3,000 threat.
Wow,
For
that's
free.
fucking awesome, dude. I love that.
Which is like the equivalent of a, almost like a 5k shadow bolt from a warlock.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
Standing at distance and everything. Yeah. So that's it's a good tactic for druids to use before a fight. You can just hot people, and assuming they're going to take damage, and you can even, if your raid's real coordinated, you can hot people, have them like take off their weapon and put it back on to lose that health. So they'll have missing health, you know what I'm saying? To get aggro from the rejuvenation.
Or if,
so you can also do that.
Yeah, that's actually really fucking
On
awesome.
troll, on horde side, you could do that to some effect too. You could do it on the trolls. They're gonna take off their gear anyway, then put it back on, and then you have.
I'm lagging. Crap.
Can you guys hear me? Okay, Def?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be me lagging. I'm not sure. I think we're okay. Am I lagging at all? My voice, is it all robot-y or
No,
good?
you're fine.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Okay. It might be Skarm. We'll just chill for a second.
Yeah.
Damn, dude, what a knowledge! I'm already learning, getting so much knowledge, man. So
I
much
know.
knowledge already,
This
man.
is awesome. Seriously.
Good. So much knowledge.
He says I'm lagging just to see
yeah.
you back now. Okay.
Oh, no worries,
Okay,
no worries,
cool.
man.
Yeah.
We'll hold it down.
Yeah, just light. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
you're back. Yep.
I was just gonna say on the horde side, all the trolls, not all, but so it's a strat that trolls implement is they'll take off their gear and pop berserking, put it back on and pop berserking, and they're gonna be missing all that stamina, and they're gonna get up to 30% haste. But if you have those hots rolling too, man, I don't know, it could be good. You'd be able to heal them up and use that hot at least, advantageously.
You could. I would say like with the priest, it's a good idea for a priest to powered shield a tank in that aspect. The only reason why you normally don't want a powered shield a tank is if they have 0 rage, because they're not going to get rage from getting hit through the shield. But if a tank already has rage from a previous pull, like good tanks will store rage right before boss from the previous trash pack, so they'll have like 100 rage going in. Absolutely shield the tank in that case.
Yep.
Damn, you're saying some cool shit here, guys. So he's saying pre-hot as a druid tank, pre-hot to get additional threat, that using a shield, powered shield on a tank is acceptable conditionally,
If
right?
they
This
have
is
rage.
cool stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, if they have rage.
Yeah.
So
This is something that I actually found out too, is like, power word shield, a lot of people like, oh no, don't use power. It's actually can be very beneficial in the right use. Just got to know when to use it. That's the thing. Got to know when to use it. Got to work with your tanks. Understand. Okay, like if you're going in there with no rage, obviously don't use it. But if you have a good amount of rage, it's something that can really add to survivability, especially on a pool when shit tends to go wrong sometimes on pools.
Yeah, and that's on the healer too. I was in Skolo yesterday. It's just 5-man. I'm in my raid gear and everything for fun. We have a priest who's like he's a tier 3 healer. But he was shielding me before every pull when I had 0 rage. Like for me, it's not. I played around it. I didn't, say anything. I didn't care. But yeah, it's like even geared raid healers, like he shouldn't have been doing that, and he should have known better at that point.
Yeah.
So people in chat are asking about paladin. Is a paladin viable at all for raid tanking?
God, I have so much to say about it. I don't know if I want to go into this right now.
it's a whole nother beast of a subject. Do you have a TLDR thoughts on paladins? I know you might have to think for a second here. If you had to summarize your thoughts on vanilla pally tanks in one sentence, that's a challenge right there.
If you want a main tank, don't roll paladin.
Ooh.
Okay.
There you go. It's pretty simple. Honestly, they don't have a taunt, guys. Like,
But taunt is not the problem, is it?
It's one of the problems, but it's definitely not the only one.
I will say that one of the coolest specs in the game is the one authorized Blessing of Sanctuary Paladin who can go deep enough into the protection tree to pick up one of the most powerful buffs in the game, and then offline when they're out of the raid, it's very much a real thing. It's part of your quality of life and overall experience in the game. You're going to be out there and you're going to be tanking like a beast as if you're Blessing of Sanctuary. Yeah, you're gonna.
I love it as leveling. Dude.
Tank, I know Skarm has videos showing how you can even do more reflect damage AoE tanking as a warrior. I saw that one, man, where you were stacking all this weird stuff. But it's a great smooth experience tanking as a paladin, just dungeons and stuff, man. Even on the way up, it's
dungeons are great. Dungeons are fine. If you want just tank dungeons, the paladin, go for it.
So here's
could you off tank raids or
you can off tank raids. You can off tank raids. You might it's hard to make an argument of why you should off tank raids over a warrior or druid, but you can.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask some really stupid, no, not stupid, but simple questions. And most of your content, if not all your content, is very highbrow, right? But sometimes it's valuable for a lot of people in the chat just to try to unpack the nuance. Vanilla WoW is so nuanced, man. Someone asks you, what's your rotation? What's the best class? What's the whatever? Like, you don't even know where to start sometimes. You're like, cheese and rice, man. There's like a bajillion variables to consider. I'd have to know you deeply, have an deep interpersonal relationship with you as a person to recommend you a class. I can't just be like,
Yeah.
Mage. You know, I just say mage, though. You people know me in the chat. They're like, what class should I play, man? Mage, dude. If you're in doubt, just go mage. You'll be fine, dude.
It's just
It's a good answer, though, man. It really is. Yeah.
But, okay. Is there anything mechanically stopping a druid from main tanking?
No.
Okay. Next question. How would you summarize some of the primary differences from a tanking perspective between druids and warriors? Like, if you just had to kind of spit useful nuggets out about each of them, like stuff that separates the two.
So druids are they're less reliant on gear in the sense that they can do better with less gear, like a lot better with less gear. You know, as I've said, kind of talked about earlier with Pummeler and everything. Druids don't have defensive cooldowns, which warriors do. That's a main difference. That's why you don't see. The thing is, how do I put this simply? Like, you can have a druid main tank most of the content. I would say 90% of the content. It would be a good idea for a good druid to tank that content, correct? However, there are a few bosses that, like Chromagus and Nefarian, for example, who run in AQ40. There's a couple bosses and a couple raids where it's just a better idea for a warrior to main tank due to cooldowns and everything else. Because of that, you need a warrior main tank to tank those bosses, right? If you have a druid in your guild who's an amazing main tank, and none of the other tanks in the guild have main tank experience, you're gonna hit a wall when you hit those bosses. So you have to have a warrior to get the job done. And since a warrior can main tank every single boss, if you have a warrior who's good enough to main tank, like, oftentimes you might as well just have that warrior main tank. You can have a druid. There are a few bosses that a druid's better at, that you can have a druid, step in and main tank those bosses. But you definitely want a warrior main tank in your guild to handle the bosses that druids aren't great at.
Also, feel free to chime in here if this is incorrect, because it's possible. But, something advantages about having a druid tank in the raid, whether it's an off tank or whatever, is it's going to offer your raid team smoother gear progression, right? You're going to be able to distribute gear smoothly, and that's a massive, like, when it comes to realistically gearing up a raid and you're not theory crafting in a vacuum, having a druid to distribute gear to is going to help move the needle substantially.
And because really let me tell you the reason why on private servers, the way private servers work right now, most raids you could have like 20 DPS warriors. Like, the more DPS warriors, the better. But guess what? How are you gonna gear up 20 DPS warriors? You know what I mean? In any kind of reasonable. Besides rank 14, that's why, like, the best guilds have rank 14 warriors that can gear up themselves. But yeah, absolutely. If you have a druid, there's druids and warriors share very few pieces of loot. So having like the druid off tank is gonna free up one piece of one warrior.
Another nugget I'll spit out, feel free to correct it or whatever, is druids have some of the most explosive threat and have been called by some people like Taladrill as like a warrior in full threat gear, right? But one drawback to the druid is that they're not connecting with a main hand offhand, and they have the first couple seconds of a fight are the most dangerous to your guild, and stabilizing that engagement, that encounter is a big deal, right? So a druid, if you miss a couple mauls, you could be in potentially really bad shape. So as a warrior, you're just connecting with a lot more stuff, bloodthirst, main hand, offhand. That is the major pain point of druids, right? Also that, and like not having a shield wall type thing, which is almost a requirement for some encounters, like Makes and stuff, right?
Yes, druids are slower but more bursty. However, when a lot of people I've seen make that argument, they say, oh, if you maul, you have to wait 2.5 seconds before you do a new one, that's the druid's base attack speed. However, with the crowd pummeler, which you should be using, it's 1.67, which is a lot faster.
That's a huge difference, dude. So someone was asking that in the chat. Okay, sorry. Continue your thought. Oh, sorry, my bad.
Yeah. Just real quick. Yeah, but missing with a 1.67 attack speed, it's not going to be a long time before you get another one. What I like to do as a tank is when I'm pulling a boss, I'll just run ahead of the raid to where by the time the other melee even catch up to the boss on foot and start attacking, like even if my first two mauls dodge, for example, I'll probably hit my third one to not hit with 3 in a row is very rare. Like unlucky,
yeah.
you know, things happen, but like that's not gonna happen very often. And so if you connect it with at least like one of your mauls, especially if it crits, like you have threat, no problem.
Right.
Yeah.
And so how many pummelers usually bring for like say MC? Would you bring like 3?
A couple. Like for bears need a lot less than cats. A cat should have 1 for every boss, which is a lot of that's rough.
Yeah.
But for a bear, you might only use 1 charge on a boss, if that. You might not. And if you're not min tanking, you're not going to use a pummeler typically. So
right.
Like 3 or 4 is a good amount to have in a raid, I would say.
Okay.
So most of us know what this is, but some people in the chat don't. So I will just talk about the manual crowd pummeler for 1 millisecond here. It is a weapon that drops from the little spider tank guy in Nomergon. And as
Nomergon of all places.
Nomergon. And it pretty much the druids, the weapon is like a stat stick. You know, you don't really, the top end doesn't matter, the weapon speed doesn't matter, all that stuff that usually matters a lot doesn't matter to them. But Skarm, what is the manual crowd pummeler do, man?
It gives 16 strength and 5 agi, which are just nice stats for feral. And what it also does is when you use it, you get 50% attack speed for 30 seconds. And that has no cooldown. You can use it in bear form. As soon as it wears off, you can pop it again right away if you need to, like after the first 30 seconds. This weapon has 3 charges. Once you use all 3 charges, you vendor or destroy it. You can't like get those charges back in any way. So you have to have new pummelers. That's why you have to have multiple of them.
Yep.
And real quick though about Nomers, like farming those might seem like kind of a pain in the ass. Alliance and Horde have easy access to Nomergon. Horde has a teleporter there from I think Booty Bay to just Nomergon. Alliance is right next to Ironforge. And there's also other trash mobs in there that drop fused wiring, which is used for repair bots. Those go for like 10-15 gold.
Yeah,
a piece,
true.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
So you can also like use that opportunity to farm some gold. It's not just about the fire pummeler, the crowd pummelers.
Good point. Fused
And
wire,
thankfully, there has been a workaround confirmed so that you can achieve the same effect that Slash Camp does achieve in the game. You just need someone in a party. Doesn't have to be in a raid. Initially, people thought it was going to be a raid, but they just have to reset it for you while you're offline, pretty much. As far as
that's what I remember something like that in vanilla. It's nice to hear that it was confirmed.
Yep.
So it'll be easier.
Yeah.
Big
Yeah,
deal.
because a lot of people were pretty pissed about that, but yeah, so not too hard. But
So someone asked in the chat.
Promote communication. You have to ask people to help.
Someone
you.
asked in the chat a while ago, how important for a druid tank is crowd pummeler? Is it absolutely essential? You're just not even in the realm of viability if you don't have one. Is it? How do you feel
It's
about
maybe
it?
essential. It's not even always like I've held threat on lines just fine without crowd pummelers. You know what I'm saying? It's more essential, or it's really only essential. Let's say it's essential if you're main tanking. If you're off tanking, the only time you would want a crowd pummeler while off tanking is on a boss, like let's say a car, where there's tank transitions. Like one tank gets mind controlled, he goes to the second highest person on threat. He's immune to taunt, so just you have to be the second highest person on threat. Crowd pummelers are great for that, for keeping up. You know what I mean, in threat when you're not tanking. Other than that, like just for off tanking trash or off tanking a mob that doesn't get attacked first, you don't need a crowd pummeler at all.
Very cool. Very cool. Very, very, very cool.
what do you think about shaman tanking, Skarm?
I have a video on that where I delete a shaman tank and I say that's how you play shaman tanks.
Damn, dude. Oh, he's a druid and a warrior purist. Okay.
Well, for tagging dungeons, though.
So here's another little nugget.
You could.
Here's a little nugget of private server knowledge, and feel free to rip it to shreds. So, because the meta on private servers has shifted in a way where Fury Defiance dual wield tanking has become so popular, and especially when stuff comes on farm content, in order, people can go full zug. You literally just hit them with there. And threat is everything. Blah 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 blah. Pretty much. One of the drawbacks of dual wield Fury Defiance tanking is that you can be crit and crushed potentially, right? So because you can be crit and crushed, that was the main thing that was passed around, holding druids back. They would say druids, they can be crit and crushed. So now that if the meta of tanking was shifting towards Fury Defiance, now druids are on the table. What do you have to say about just crit and being able to get crit and crushed as a druid?
So before I get to that part specifically, real quick, I want to say you mentioned farm content when things are on farm versus progression. Something that I just want to comment on that I haven't said before is that progression or farm contents, that's most of the time. You're progressing for like a week or two, maybe a couple weeks, and then things are more or less on farm, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the time, like I hear these like, oh, this only works, this doesn't work during progression, which that's debatable. But even if it doesn't, oh well, you progress, BWL comes out, you progress it for a few weeks, and that's on farm until AQ. That's a long time.
It's a good point.
So,
yeah.
That's strats that quote unquote only work on farm status are still, quite viable, quite worth talking about.
The majority of the time you're doing the raid, right? It's going to be.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so as for being crit and crushed, this also just goes back. There are times to put on a shield. Like when it comes to dual tanking, like people ask, I've gotten the question like, what bosses do dual tank and what bosses do you put on a shield on? And it's a lot more dynamic than that. Like I'll be dual tanking a boss, and if I feel like my health's getting low for some reason, I'll put on a shield for a couple seconds or maybe longer than that until my health stabilizes, until I feel like the healers are comfortable, and then I'll put on an offhand again. Or if I'm just so far ahead in threat, like on that Globules fight where I was like 50k above the next highest person, I just put on a shield because it's like, well, why am I dual wielding at this point? Like it's fun,
Right.
but besides that, there's no practical reason to dual wield when you're that far ahead on threat. So put on a shield.
True.
And even if you're dual wielding though, like while you're dual wielding, if again, like we talked earlier, if healers are just paying attention, doing what they're supposed to, they don't even have to have like super good gear, the healers, because if you think about it, when it comes to healing, the only two things your gear's really doing is increasing your plus healing and increasing your longevity through intellect or MP5 or spirit or whatever. That's it. If a boss say dies in 20 seconds, like in Molten Core, you can kill bosses in 20 seconds.
Yeah.
The healers aren't going to run out of mana even if they're spamming big heals.
Yeah.
Which is why in like speed clear guilds, which confused me at first, you'll see a lot of the healers in like plus healing greens, right? Like Eternal Crown of plus healing or whatever the hell it is. No stats at all, but a huge amount of plus healing. Well, if you're not going because the bosses are dying so fast, what else do you need besides plus healing as a healer?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So if the healers are gearing properly, and it depends on your guild. If you have slow kill times, you're going to want to focus more on MP5, or maybe just bring some mana potions. Like that could patch up the issue.
Right.
The healers are gearing properly and healing the tank properly. Getting crit and crushed is just not an issue. People overhype it way too much.
Okay, they overhype it way too much. That's one
They
of
really
the
do.
key takeaways you're getting from this, guys. Listen to that. They overhype getting crit and crushed too much. Okay.
Would that probably change if we see the vanilla rates, the classic rates? I mean, the crit and crush thing is something from vanilla, and now we had private servers, and it seems like it's not that big of an issue, but maybe the bosses do some bigger one-shots than we are used to.
Well,
Or is
also
that totally out of the question.
Well, also in Classic, and this is confirmed, like I don't have the source in front of me. For mobs, and including bosses, only their auto attacks can crit. Only their Y attacks can crit. Like, I've heard people say like, oh, what if you're tanking Broodlord and he crits you with Mortal Strike? He can't. His Mortal Strike cannot crit, 0% chance. It's a special ability. Same with like Dragon Breath, like Shadow Flame, cannot crit. Only wide attacks can crit. Which wide attacks are, besides the occasional parry haste, like wide attacks are timed. They're on a timer. You know what I mean? Every 2 seconds or 2 point, however fast or slow the boss. Most bosses are around like 2.0, 2.5 attack speed for the most part. And those are the only attacks that can crit. And so if you're like, I've been hit before, like I've been hit by an auto attack, my health dropped. I put on a shield before the next auto attack and hit shield block. Shield block is not on the global cooldown. You can put on a shield and hit shield block as fast as your connection allows you to.
Yeah.
And if you hit shield block, you're going to have over 100% total avoidance. You cannot get crit or crush in that case.
Wow.
That's one thing too when it comes to warriors. Again, always feel free to just jump in. I'm saying some dumbass stuff, but you can swap between dual wield, and it's not mutually exclusive. Some people are like, yo, I'm dual wield tanking. Okay, now I'm sword and board tanking. No, actually, the good tanks are constantly swapping between, and it's very much like there's a lot that goes into the tanking, man. And especially because this is one thing that's really interesting about tanking. You kind of like go in and take baby steps based on your group, and you just like tinker around with stuff and change your playstyle, change your gear as you go when you're doing progression, and you're kind of moving it. I'm curious though, man, is that a warrior thing? Like, what do druids tinker around with gear in the same way and have a bag full of gear and they're just constantly, slapping different things on? Like,
I think most classes do though, don't they?
Not as sort of. So first of all, very good, very well put about tanking. You're just kind of feeling out your group. That's an excellent way of putting it, actually. Where as a tank, if you're not sure of your group's capabilities, feel them out. Start more on like the defensive side, maybe. See how your healers are, see how your DPS are. Because at the end of the day, if you're not losing threat, you could use more mitigation. You know what I'm saying? Like on Lotheb, for example, Naxxramas, not only is that fight healing intensive because the heals you can only heal once a minute per healer, but threat's not an issue because of a debuff it's technically a debuff, but it's more like a buff that DPS don't generate threat. So there's no reason to not wear full mitigation gear on that fight, and ours do. So simply put, when threat's not an issue, wear more mitigation, right?
Right.
And so you kind of feel out your group. Warriors do that a lot more than druids. Druids, really, your crowd pump. If you put on a crowd pummeler, your threat issues magically go away for the most part. So on my druid, and a lot of the druid gear, especially later on, even early on, there's just not as much of it available. A lot of the druid gear is like high armor and strength, agi, stamina. That's how it's itemized. And strength and agi are also good for threat. Yep. And so a lot, like my druid, for example, right now, I have all the gear from AQ40 and everything. It's mitigation oriented, but I just happen to generate good threat as well because of the stats on it and also manual crowd pummeler. So I really don't ever change. I very rarely change gears to druid. Maybe 1 or 2 pieces sometimes. Whereas like a warrior, I have entire stats that change.
It seems like really good quality of life improvement potentially on druid, man. Considering, and especially with warriors too, they have to strive for the that's their number one thing, right? They're trying to get the defense squared away, right? Yeah. And druids are just chilling, right? I don't know.
Well,
pretty much, and well, even warriors, like due to things we've talked about so far, getting defense capped is the reason also why it's not as important, because again, you can hit shield block without any plus defense and still you're gonna have enough of total avoidance to not be crit or crushed as long as shield block's up.
Okay.
So defense is nice because it gives some avoidance. Like 8 defense is about 1% total avoidance. That's what it comes out to. And tank gear just happens to have defense on it. So you're gonna get defense regardless, you know what I mean? You're gonna get some defense, but it's not like unlike what people used to believe, like 440 defense is what you want to aim for. There's no specific defense threshold that you want to aim for.
Interesting. So that's not your
breaking the old fucking
So what is your top priority? Like the number one either stat or thing that you're pursuing as either a warrior or a druid then? Because that's the common knowledge. I think people are just desperately trying to get their defense into a serviceable position.
Stamina and armor, or more health, more armor.
Which druids have both of both. They have more of both comparatively to warriors. Sorry, I'm freaking
correctly. Yeah. Warriors start to catch up in like Nax with tier 3.
Only Nax.
Only Nax. Like right now, my warrior in like full tier 3, full defensive gear has a little less armor than my druid, but I can still hit armor cap with like inspiration from a priest, like different raid buffs, which is what's important.
Would you say that druids are the best tanks up until AQ40?
That's a bold statement, dude.
Nax?
Oh man.
That's dependent on the situation. For some things,
fight,
yes. Right? It depends on the fight. Like again, like Chromagus and Neff are bad ideas for druids to tank in general because of reasons. And certain bosses like that. But in certain bosses, like if you're just in a guild, which I don't advocate this playstyle. I think that a guild should be working toward getting better. Even if you're casual, like everyone can improve. You know, even if you don't have time to farm consumables or anything like that, you can improve your rotation. There's plenty of things during the raid that you can improve. You know, not being AFK as much, whatever the case. So, but in certain guilds where the bosses just take super long to kill and the healers are going in because the DPS sucks, mitigation is more important.
Interesting.
And if your DPS sucks enough to, you know what I mean, to pull too much threat.
How do you feel about this statement though? And I've talked with some tanks about this. Pretty much, some tanks almost. I mean, they like avoidance is like a luxury stat to them, but they almost avoid it. They almost just try to go for more damage because avoidance means spikier damage that you're taking and less threat when you potentially avoid something. You're getting less rage, and that some tanks they just go for max damage is the number one thing, and actually avoidance isn't as valuable as people might think.
I like avoidance because if I have super high avoidance and I'm dodging too much, the reason why anyone considers avoidance a bad thing is because you don't get threat when you dodge, obviously. Right. So less you have, the more avoidance you have, the less rage you have. Threat might be an issue. To offset that, I dual wield because when I do get hit, I'm getting hit for more. I'm doing more damage. I'm generating more rage from dual wielding, and when I do get hit, I'm getting more rage from getting hit harder. So dual wielding to me offsets. Like I have a lot of dodge on my warrior. I have a lot of avoidance. I like avoidance. I'm a fan of it. And on druids, that's a non-issue either because the way Maul only costs 10 rage, you get 5 rage back when you crit. rage issues are just pretty much non-existent for a druid.
Yeah.
So as a druid, the more avoidance, the better. Again, if you have to choose between like avoidance and stamina and health, I don't have like obviously there's like a number threshold where, you know, one becomes more important than the other.
Right.
But I would still go for stamina defense or stamina armor, sorry, on warrior and druid first.
Stam is never going to go. It's like,
yeah.
So something that's pretty funny. I think this is where it stemmed from. Let me ask you. You know, warriors had a bad rep, especially in the beginning of vanilla, right? They were not nowhere near as good as they got. You know, when they got pretty much retuned. Bear form got way more armor. Do you think it was that like initial like bad taste of druids that kind of just stuck to a lot of people? Why a lot of people think that druids are not as good tanks as they are?
Yeah, I do, because for the first half of vanilla they were awful tanks. Like for a while they didn't even have high armor and bear form. Like there was a lot of druid problems. And not only that, but Innervate, to say nothing else about druids, Innervate was a 31-point resto talent.
Yeah.
And everyone liked Innervate. So if you were a druid in a raid without Innervate, well, you wouldn't be in that raid to begin with, probably. You know, they're like, oh, you don't have Innervate? Get out. Go away.
But something else I noticed too is like I think druids get a bad rep, not just for tanking. Like, you know, for me, I'm healers. Healing's my thing. I've seen, you know, time and time again, druid healers just surprise the hell out of me. I think a lot of people give druid healers a bad rep too. It's like, oh, they're the worst healers, is that and the other. I can't tell you. I have this guy, Scrub Express, on. He's a really good druid healer. Yeah, every time he would give it all the priests, he would give them, Innervate, and he'd be right under us with his heal. I mean, Nature Swiftness, Healing Touch. Like, can't tell you how many times that saved our tank's ass. And I think druids as a whole kind of get a bad rep, whether it's healing, whether it's DPSing in cat form or whatever. I think they get a bad rep for not only tanking but for healing as well. And I've really time and time again just been surprised by druids.
I would say that druid healers have to work a little harder. They don't have their main heal is Healing Touch rank 4, which is 2.5 second cast. So they have slower heals than all other 3 classes do. Yeah. They don't have a flash heal really. They do have Regrowth, which is 2 second cast, and if you spec into 21-0-30, what that does is it increases your regrowth crit chance by 50%. So most of your regrowths are critting. Yeah. And after a spell crit, your next cast is 0.5 seconds faster. So regrowth turns into a 1.5 second cast. Max rank regrowth costs 880 mana. It's a very expensive spell.
Yeah.
If you just spam it, you're gonna go very fast.
Oh yeah.
So druids have to try harder. They have to use more consumables, really, I would say, than other healers. More mana potions, more MP5 stuff. You know, dark runes, demonic runes, maybe Flask of Distilled Wisdom. But if a druid's, you know, I'd say it's a little more try hard than other heals. But if you put in the effort, druids can absolutely stand up there with other healers.
As Egregious said really well, when he's a really seasoned shaman healer, but he's played all the classes at a high level, and he was saying that, you know, the main way druids shine is like when your healers are playing as one collective mana pool, and they know how to let HOTS do their thing and to actually get value from them, so people aren't just
that's the point as well.
Yeah. Another thing real quick, Nefo, wow, thank you very much for the Twitch Prime, man. That's 2 months in a row. I got another question for you, Skarm. So Fury Defiance tanking, it's kind of like a Fury spec, right? And you have some big boy weapons, and you're facing the boss is actually hitting you. Unlike Fury Warriors, who are behind the boss, you're getting hit, dude. You're making more rage. So, you know, one thing that's always is interesting to me that I learned is that, you know, Fury Defiance tanks, you're putting out some solid damage. They're up there, man. How does Druid compare to that, though? And is that just a non-factor to you?
Druids don't do as much damage as bear druids just don't do as much damage. Fury Prot Warriors, I mean, I beat people on DPS regularly.
Damn.
So,
but what if they were the protection spec though, and they weren't doing? Let's say we're doing progression and we're in phase 1 and we're going through Molten Core, and you have a druid tank versus a prot tank there, because that was another thing that was thrown around, that druids do high damage though comparatively.
They definitely do higher damage than a prot warrior in mid.
Okay.
They definitely do more damage than that.
So it's
but not as much as Fury Prot.
Okay, so it's when you make that switch over to Fury Defiance from the traditional protection that you start doing insane damage. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Druids get insane with gear. Like, I mean, I'm sorry, warriors. Like, the more gear a warrior gets, the better they just do, I guess. Right?
Yeah, they scale a lot better. Druids scale with gear as well. It's mostly due to the reason why warriors also scale, just in case anyone was wondering, the reason why they scale so much better with gear than other classes, the main reason is because of their rage bar. No other class, like a rogue, for example, what you could be at level 1 naked or at level 60 with tier 3.
Yeah.
You're gonna regenerate rage or energy. Sorry, exactly the same. It's 20 every 2.5 seconds, I think, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a warrior, the more damage you do, the more rage you get.
Yep.
And so like fully world buffed Nax geared warrior, you're gonna get more rage than you can spend. You're gonna be spamming heroic strike, hitting bloodthirst, hitting whirlwind, and still you're just gonna have like 100 rage randomly. You know what I mean? If you crit a few times.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense. I never thought about it that way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question about Fury tank. The Fury tank still has a few talents in protection. Is that right?
Yes, 20.
So
You use like 20 or 17, yeah.
So I used to play a warrior in vanilla, and in our guild we did not have a full protection tank. We all were
31,
20
515,
and most of the tanks went 31 in Fury and the rest in protection. Some went 31 in arms and the rest in protection. So I wonder, is that something only we did, or was Fury tanking already a thing in vanilla WoW?
A lot of people, like I definitely ran 31, 515 for a while as well. Shield Slam, I know Shield Slam specifically, the 31 point prot talent was crappy for most of vanilla. Like warriors didn't have Shield Slam for a bit. So that's the main thing. Like Classic is 1.12 trees. We're starting off with the same talents. We're keeping the same talents throughout the expansion. It was not like that in vanilla at all. So that really affected how people did things, and also affects people's memories, because you're like, well, I remember doing this and that, and a lot of the times it was because of those talent points. So and it like 31 515 obviously isn't the best way to tank. It's really like off tanks who want to PvP and also have Defiance.
Right.
So it's like, because of the 1.12 talent trees, that's why like deep prot was, that's why people spec deep prot to begin with. I'd say.
I see.
So here's another question. Iron Foe. What do you feel about Iron Foe? It's basically not farmable anymore. Is this a buff to druids? You can't just spam BRD lava runs and get it now. Pretty much.
How come?
0.001% drop chance.
Well, it's still the same drop chance on private. It's still very low drop chance.
1%. 1% on private.
Was it?
Yep.
Okay.
1% on private.
Okay, fair enough.
I did 74 runs till we got one.
Well, even if so a BRD lava run takes about 10-12 minutes with a good group. You can do 5 in an hour.
And you get a lot of gold.
You get a lot of gold. I still think people farm it. Like I have seen, like Baron Rivendare, he drops his epic sword. Has a very low drop chance. Like I had that in retail. They do drop. They're rare, but they do drop. And I think people who really want Iron Foe will still farm for one. It will take longer to get, but I still think people will farm for him. This all depends on the proc rate. We don't know. Some people are saying it might be 4%, it might be 10%. We have no idea yet. If it's like a 10% proc rate, it's gonna be an extremely good weapon. Like I'll probably farm for one. I'll try to farm for one if it's a 10% proc rate. It took me about 130 runs, somewhere around there, to get my Iron Foe on private. So it's a lot of runs. It takes a while.
We did 74, so yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think people are still gonna farm it.
It's either 0.01 or 0.001. That was the thing. Like it was basically apparently not farmable back in vanilla, and the people that did have Iron Foes were like rogues and like random people because it just dropped. So
like 0.001 is like the Baron mount, which there's some servers that didn't have a single one. I think it's higher than that. I think it's like 0.01. Maybe like 1 in 1,000 chance. I don't know, but we'll see. Depends on the proc rate and depends on the drop chance, I suppose.
I think people are still gonna farm for it, honestly.
It's a lot of runs, though, fam.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do it with my tank, especially. You make a lot of, especially in pre Dire Maul. For me, like making gold, like that was how well, I wonder if I guess will rogues still be able to start the 7D event by stealthing through and other people go on the other side? That should
I would assume
work,
so.
Right?
Yeah. I would assume so.
That getting those 7D runs and all, like, you make a lot of gold. That's a good way to make gold, especially in phase 1 before Dire Maul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not for rogues anymore, but
also for the 7D, there's that healing hammer that everyone wants.
Yes.
Well,
now but the staff.
Yeah, that's exactly. You read my mind. That's what I was gonna say.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Which actually, I mean, so the offhand, I'd actually would rather have Hammer of Grace in the offhand that he drops, the last boss. Thorician's whatever it's called.
The Receptor. That's probably better, actually.
Yeah, you actually get more intel that way. Yeah. So because the staff doesn't have like any intel.
I forgot that the offhand. That's true. You can do either.
Yeah. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to probably go. Well, I'll get the whatever one I get first. But yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yo, how is the gearing on a druid tank? Like if you actually were to be in that main tank role, I look at the warrior one, and right now I'm looking at this guide we made, and it's a very ambitious like path forward. Like you're getting stockade pauldrons, getting all this stuff. Like it's expensive. Is druid comparably rough, or is it?
It's so druid. The only really expensive BOE, like world drop, that you're buying is the warden staff, which if you want that in phase 1, it's probably going to be expensive, like 500 plus gold. Mm-hmm. However, in phase 2, when Dire Maul comes out, there's what's called an yielding maul off the last boss in the tribute chest. It's exactly the same thing. It's like 2 stam difference, 10 armor difference, like very minuscule differences. So if you want to, unless you really need a warden stat in phase 1, if you want to wait as a druid to farm Dire Maul in phase 2, which some people might not even hit level 60 until after phase 2, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So besides that one weapon though, the druid gear, it's not, you don't have to buy it, but some of it's a pain in the ass to farm.
Oh, is it? Okay. Yeah.
Just fucking cut off again.
I'm so excited for Classic now. You guys are making me so excited, dude.
Me too,
I can't wait to do these. I just can't wait to. I can't wait.
I think it's cut off again. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I can hear you fine.
You play the beta.
I
know. I even played the beta too. I'm so ready to play. I love my class. I love being a priest. I love everything about it. It sounds like Skarm, you're dead set on druid and right. So yeah.
It's really interesting how you said druid is that good. I never thought about that being the best tank potentially in the early race. So
druids need more class leaders who are high speed and are badass, dude. I'm really happy, man. Hopefully we see more druids because
I know, dude.
We probably will see more than on maybe some of the private servers and stuff, but I still think it'll probably be the most underrepresented class, right? So
a neat thing in Rage 2 is that druids are like a feral druid, even an off tank. They're really good at keeping the pace because druids are really good at pulling. They have like Moonfire, Fairy Fire. They're instantly hit the target, 30-yard range. Warriors, you have to shoot a bow. It can be a little bit of a pain in the ass to pull on a warrior.
True. Feral Fairy Fire is incredible. Isn't it 40 yards, the range on it?
It's 30.
Oh, it's 30. It's still pretty high. Still really good, though. Costs nothing, instant. It's so good, dude. So insanely good. All right.
And it reduces armor, right? So, yeah.
Yep.
It's important.
Yep. Definitely. Okay, so let's here's the next question, moving on to Skarm. So there's probably some people in here that are that want to be a tank, right? They want to go in a tank. They don't have a whole lot of experience, but they're dedicated. They're ambitious. They're trying to learn up everything they can. Do you have any general words of wisdom for people that want to tank in classic WoW?
So I guess watch my videos, but but for real though, like I talk about that throughout my videos, even if just a little bit. So there's a lot of accumulated knowledge there. But in general, just be confident. Tanking can be stressful. Just try to get as much knowledge as you can get. You want to be, I would say, if it's a main tank, you want to be the most prepared person in the raid. You want to have more consumables than anyone else, or as many. You know what I'm saying? Because there's so much that relies on you. You're on a 40-man team basically, and if you die or lose threat, then people are going to wipe. People are going to lose time. Like you have such a large effect on the raid as a main tank. So you want to really do everything in your power to be prepared as you can. And if you're not, like, if you don't know a certain fight, like, don't just communicate with the group. Be like, hey, it's my first time tanking. Maybe hold off threat a little bit. Just communicate with your raid. Talk to your healers. Be honest. Try to be confident though at the same time. I'm kind of going all over the place here, but
there's for sure.
Do it.
It's such a broad thing to
healer's
tackle.
mana, right?
Pay attention to healer's mana. I have a video about that. So absolutely, there's a lot of I could talk about this for a long time, but in general, and I do, but just in general, just follow your dreams. You can, if you really want to do it, just do your homework and try it out.
I also think you can very quickly get a good read. You could get very quickly, probably within like 2 minutes, get a read of what caliber a tank is, right? Like just by doing a dungeon run with them, right? Their positioning, how they pull, the rate at what they pull. There's a lot of things that go into it. So another thing I would just throw out there is take your dungeons seriously, man. And you're building up a lot of fundamentals there of keeping track of your group, making sure they're all buffed up. And there's a lot of like things that aren't related to specifically tanking that you have to be mindful of. Just marking and stuff, general like facilitating communication in the chat and stuff like that. Like you kind of have a natural leadership position as a tank, for better or for worse, right?
Exactly. Dungeons are like mini raids in that aspect, where a lot of the same concepts, same mechanics translate over to a raid. The more dungeons you run, the better at raids you'll be, and the more prepared you'll be before first stepping into a raid. So absolutely, I would recommend any tank run every dungeon multiple times, at least like 4 or 5 times while leveling. If you do that, you're gonna have some practice in before you hit 16. You're gonna know what you're doing.
Andy with the 100 biddies saying Skarm is a god. Thanks for having him on. Thanks for the 100, man. Sorry, Dad.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's a great
No,
guy.
I was just gonna say something that I early on, I played a DPS and I went healer. I did tank a little bit, not until Wrath, because I was intimidated by tanking for a long, and I think a lot of people are as well. And I wasn't that much of an extrovert. I felt very comfortable in the healer role. I liked that role a lot, and then I tanked for the first time, and I got it right. And I still like healing. Healing's my thing, but it's something that for the longest time I was thinking, oh, it's harder, it's this, that, and other. I'm not that kind of. And then once you do it, in my first tanking was a druid. I did druid tanking and paladin tanking back in. I'm sorry, it was at the very end of BC is the first time I started tanking as a druid. I loved it, and I really got and I understood so much more about the game when I started tanking, and it really opened my eyes into so many other things, other mechanics that go on, other things that happen. Before, like, as playing a rogue, it was all, basically, to kick, knowing when to kick and do this or do that. But, like, it really opened my mind up to so much more. And I would say to anyone out there who's afraid of tanking because you think it's too hard or this and another, is to give it a shot, to give it a try, because there are so many, like I said, good videos you could watch, Skarms, that'll, teach you a little bit of what to do and how to do it. But once you give it a try and you realize what it is, until you try it, you're not going to be able to. It's only going to seem like this thing that's impossible and far away, but just give it a shot.
I think just
honestly
playing a warrior in general, dude. Playing a warrior in general will teach you really good, like, you'll be able to respect mobs a lot more as a warrior. And it's so for me as a hunter player, I've made hunter 3 times in a vanilla environment, and I've developed a lot of bad habits as a hunter. Like, no joke, I shit you not, my whole mentality is like, don't even loot anything, just stash your bag with arrows, get to 60 as fast as possible, and then go into Maraudon and pretty much like be half asleep watching stuff on Netflix, get all the gold you would ever need in Maraudon, and be good to go. So even playing a warlock now for just a little bit here and experiencing this class, I'm having to be mindful of my inventory. I'm having to be mindful of a lot of things, and it's I feel like as a warrior or a tank in general, you're in the spotlight, and you're gonna develop a lot of situational awareness, and very well said.
Yeah.
That's
like I said, I
said,
played it in vanilla, and it was so stressful. I never went to tanking again. But now you talk about the druid tanking, it seems like druid is the easier way to start tanking in vanilla.
Druids are definitely easier to start, the way to start tanking in vanilla. And the thing about 5-mans too is they're a lot less stressful. Like you can even get 4 friends. It's not that hard to find. So if you want to practice, start in a low stress environment. Start in a 5-man. Start in a dungeon.
Yeah,
druids are definitely.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, druids are definitely easier mechanically. If you want to try a tank, but you're not sure if you like it, ask yourself if you say tanking didn't work for you, would you rather DPS instead, or would you rather heal instead? Roll warrior if you'd rather DPS instead. Roll druid if you'd rather heal instead. If tanking falls through for you.
Yeah. It's a good way to look at it. So, I would even consider rolling a druid tank. Now we talked, and I never ever considered tanking before.
You're making the pally go druid.
I know, right?
I'm happy to probably be an out, but I will go paladin for sure. But it's interesting. I never thought of it. Yeah, paladins can easily tank dungeons. That's fine.
Yeah,
it's just crazy though. It's like with anything, especially with PvP and PvE. I mean, with both, like. For me, until I started playing, because a long time I was like priest, rogue, this whatever, that was my thing when I first started playing. And then as you start playing more classes, you really start to understand, knowing how other classes work, like as a tank, and and Skarm, I'm sure like how priests work and how this works. It really helps you as a player.
Oh, 100%.
To shine the best you can, knowing how other classes work.
100%.
We'll talk about that a little bit. Yeah.
So absolutely. The more, and just even if it's not necessarily the specific class, playing different roles. Druids can play every single role. You can range DPS, melee DPS, tank, heal. Theoretically. So yeah, absolutely. Playing the more roles you play and the more classes you play, if you do that as well, it'll absolutely help you. Like I can tell, like as a DPS or as a healer, when I'm running with another tank, I already know that like, oh, I might not want DPS right now because just based on what he's doing, or I need to heal him a lot now, or I need to get ready to, like, I'll be running at the tank as a healer and I'm like, oh, I'm about to pull healing threat. I have to heal him because he's gonna die, but I know that these other mobs are gonna come toward me, so I'm ready to like go bear form or hit fade or bubble or whatever the case.
Yep.
So 100%, the more you play, the more different roles you play, the better. Because again, this is a team game. Raiding and dungeons are a team game. You're always working with other people, so it really helps to know what they're going through, what they have to manage as their role.
100%. Druid's also a class that's at the same note, like, it's maybe easier to get into the tanking. It's a very sophisticated class in the sense that you don't always know what to do as a druid, especially in PvP or something like that. The lines are not super apparent.
A lot
to
of
you.
nuance.
A lot of nuance, popping in and out of form, knowing, am I gonna, attrition this guy out with just Moonfire spam, or am I gonna face tank, and just managing your caster form mana and your regular form mana. I will say though, okay, I mean that was kind of a quick aside, but I think in some respects it's fair to say that druids have a better quality of life than warriors in some ways. They probably have easier leveling, right? If we're talking about solo leveling, right? They have more access to more farming methods, right? You can stealth, you can do princess runs, you can do lots, because you have all these different forms and stuff and different play styles, you can have access to a lot of these different farms. You can also kind of AoE grind as a druid. Sorry, I'll stop now. What were you saying?
Oh, sorry, go on. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say that you can throw up like moonfire and stuff on a bunch of different targets, and even I've seen these, like I've been watching videos from Eben and stuff, and some of these other druids out there that are and they're using hurricane, they're using these spells that I don't really see lots of uses for, and they're AoE grinding. There's lots of cool things you can do on a druid, is my point, and you can get kind of creative with the class.
You definitely can, like the hurricane grinding, for example, the lashers in Diamal East, which are going to be popular farm. You can do that as a druid. I've done it. It's easy. Yep. Even in like fresh 60 gear. Druids also have a Moonglade port, which is not a lot of people mention, but you can teleport to Moonglade whenever you want, which is right near Darnassus, Winterspring. It's on Kalimdor. So if you're Alliance and you're hanging out in Eastern Kingdoms mostly, you just have a free. It has no cooldown. It has no hour cooldown like her, so you can just go to Moonglade whenever you want. And in a group, you can fill any role, like in a dungeon. When leveling, like I advertise, I'm like, I'll tank DPS or heal. Whatever other 4 people I get, I'll fill in the role accordingly as a druid. Mm-hmm. And you can DPS or tank as a warrior, but you can't heal.
I feel like Boomkin is not getting not getting enough attention right now. But I actually played it last week on a private server in PvP, and it's actually quite good and really fun to do.
I love it in PvP.
Yeah.
My druid's never been in Moonkin form.
Yeah, I mean, so people say Moonkin form. Going down to get Moonkin talent is one thing, but the balanced talents are good. I will say the balanced talents are good. You don't have to say you're a balanced druid necessarily, because there's certain prejudice with that. But like Omen of Clarity, fantastic talents.
Moonglow,
some of those,
dude,
like the natural shape shifting. Yeah, some of those talents in the balance tree are valuable. So in a way, you're playing balance to a certain extent.
But don't most resto druids go down to Moonglow?
Yeah, that's. Yeah, usually. So there's a lot of good things in the balance tree. And for PvP, I don't know about Moonkin form, but I know I've heard 30-0-21. Instead of getting Moonkin, you get Nature Swiftness, so you have an instant heal or an instant Wrath, I guess. There's some viability for PvP with that spec. I've seen some good druids. Storm, I think. Javel is one of them. So yeah, definitely you can. Yeah, and if your thing is PvPing, you can PvP in several different ways. Druids they're really just the most versatile class. You can do more than any other class can as far as distinctly different roles. So it's hard to get bored on Druid.
Yeah,
I love how this turned into a Druid, like all about Druids.
Yeah, right. Druid podcast.
Yeah. It's cool though. It's a lot of people are still trying to figure out what class they're gonna play, and it's cool that they have like a passionate, kind of person who's a representative for the class, and just I don't know, it's good. It's
so if I'm rolling on a US server as an alt, I will most likely make it through it.
There you go.
There you go.
Right
there
now,
you go.
Just
good stuff.
It's too much interesting things to do. Cannot pass on that, I think. Yeah, I have a few questions, but it's more like if you want to go on about the tanking stuff, go on. But
yeah, sure.
If we're done, I have a few questions.
Sure.
Anyone? Okay, so just some personal questions for you. What are your yeah? You basically answered part of it, but what are your main plans for Classic WoW other than playing a druid first and then going a tank warrior? Probably.
So I'm rolling both classes. Like I said, I'm rolling Horde right now. My concrete plans are Horde on a U.S. server, West Coast, and a PvP server, not PvE. I'm gonna make a video about that at some point, but definitely PvP server. And West Coast. I live in California. I'm close to Blizzard in Irvine. I think they're in Irvine still. I'm like an hour away from them, so I shouldn't I shouldn't get any lag issues or anything like that. That's what I'm really looking forward to.
Yo,
and so
sorry.
Is there anything like going rank 14 or get the Anchorage scepter, something like that?
I would love at least rank 13 on both warrior and druid. I don't know. I'm not gonna. I mean, that's a lot. So I don't know. I haven't decided my final plans with ranking yet. You know what I mean? That's obviously a huge time investment, even if you just do one tune.
Good to know that's on your radar, though. I didn't know you're into PvP so much. That's cool.
I like world PvP a lot more than like I'll world PvP whenever. I never get tired of it. Battlegrounds I'll get bored with sometimes. Obviously that's the best way to rank though, so I'll be doing a lot of BGs if I rank. But world PvP, that's my besides raiding and dungeons. Like world PvP is my second favorite thing.
Yo, okay. I have a question though. All right, so you've done like Nax speed runs and stuff like that, like pretty much.
Correct.
Like that's insane. When you're speed running Nax, that's on some next level shit. Like anyway, what do your meters look like up there, dude? I'm just wondering, just as a generalization, you know, or like how are the classes mathing out at those certain? Not to say the meters are everything, right? I just had a disclaimer that, but are you? How are Warlocks doing, dude? Are Warlocks up there, dude? Warlocks doing good?
Warlocks they're generally on top is the Ignite Mage, or whichever mage has the Ignite, because that factors in the meter.
Okay.
But I would say individually, Warlocks, unfortunately, even at this levels, they only have like 11-12% hit. So sometimes your Shadow Bolts resist. Warlocks are chronically starved for hit cap throughout all Classic, because they don't get any talents into it. But if you once you get the gear as a Warlock, they can start competing. Absolutely. Like there's some Warlocks up there on the meters for sure. Some of it's RNG, some of it's luck because, you know, depending on how many crits or how many resists you get. But Warlocks can definitely compete. And you always want at least 3 Warlocks in the raid for the 3 curses.
Right.
Element, shadows, and recklessness. So and Warlocks, some people and everything else, they're always wanted.
Is it all blue and brown at the top?
Yeah, mostly brown. A touch of blue.
Touch of blue. Okay.
There's some yellow too. I mean, on paper,
yellow, man.
Warriors are better than rogues on paper. But
there's always that one rogue, yeah, dude.
Yeah, there's always the one rogue. Again, we talked about there's only a certain amount of gear. You know what I mean? There's not always enough to go to gear out. 20 warriors or whatever. So rogue tier gear does drop. Daggers drop.
I love dagger rogues, man. I'm a huge dagger rogue fan.
So yeah, there's definitely a spot for rogue. There's a spot for any class in a raid, of course. Hunters, there's usually only 1 or 2 though. I would say 1 or 2.
We're still hanging in there though. We're still hanging in there. We got a couple.
They fall off pretty hard after BWL, but they hang in there.
Yeah, after BWL, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think about hybrids and their place? And one thing that we've talked about a lot is like potential of it's not just about numbers, where you can't really put a number on things like totem twisting or bringing things like Winfrey to the table. But how do you feel of about that?
So this is actually my next video, and I guess good news for people who want to roll a hybrid spec. Pretty much all the healer classes, either like Shadow Priest or Ret Paladin. You can raid as any one of those classes, absolutely. There might only be 1 or 2 spots in the raid for those specs, and you're gonna have to work pretty hard. But I've killed every boss in the game with at least 1 person in the raid that's like a Ret Paladin, Moonkin, Shadow Priest. Not Shaman because I don't play Horde, but I've cleared all content with all of those classes. It's absolutely possible. That's gonna be what my next video is about. The one thing I'll say right here as far as support classes is actually be a support class. Don't be a Ret Paladin and take all the warrior gear and only DPS and refuse to heal and not cleanse and not do any of the thing. You know what I mean? Not buff. If you're gonna play a support class, support your raid.
Thank you so much. I was talking to someone the other day. I'm like, listen, like if we're gonna be doing MC, like certain fights, you're gonna have to be dispelling. Like that's your job. You're gonna be dispelling. You can try to keep up Shadow Vulnerability as much as you want, but like dispelling, you're a priest, you will dispel. you're a druid, you're going to be, removing curses and things like that. Like, and listen, if you're an elemental shaman and you see the tanker about to go down and you have a nature swiftness, use it to heal. Like,
absolutely,
you are a hybrid class, which means that you are you should be doing multiple things.
Yeah.
You're there to support the raid any way you can.
What's funny is in the early days of vanilla WoW, I feel like the hybrid classes actually played more like support, and the further the raiding got, they basically polarized more towards the healing or the tanking. Or
I think you could say that. I was in a strat live run the other day. I pugged 4 random people. One of them was a ret paladin, which is fine, and for a 5-man. And there's a lot of debuffs in there, like poisons and diseases. I was asking him to dispel me, and he wasn't. And I'm like, I need you to dispel me, like, as soon as I get a debuff. And he responded with, I'm a DPS class, not a support class.
Oh, man.
As soon as he said that, I didn't kick him, but I'm like, I would never invite that person to raid after hearing that. That's it. I'm never,
he had to have been memeing you, dude. Are there still those determined ret pallies out there who are like,
yeah, and this
just
guy like
judgment,
like he came from retail, dude.
He's probably doing a solid 100 DPS. I'm assuming his gear's really bad.
Dude, that's funny as fuck.
I think it's being serious. Man. Don't be that guy. If you're gonna, don't be that guy.
Yo, one thing I say to that too, though, is a lot of people. I think a lot of people. Maybe it's not a lot of people. I think some people though, they PVE to PvP. It's a clean way of saying it. A lot of people PVE to PvP. Oh, yeah. So don't worry about it, man. Like PvE, like just support the raid. You're doing this, and the means to the end is gonna go in PvP, and then you can do whatever you want in PvP. You can go any spec you want, man. So in the PvE, just be a team player, because a lot of people, get obsessed with the meters, and I say this to a lot of my hunter brothers out there who are like, dude, do I go hunter, man? Like, I don't know, man. They fall off. It depends what your goals are, man. If you want a PvP, hunters are not falling off, fam.
They never fall off.
They are solid, and you take it from OG Haptics with this video it's probably the most popular PvP video right now for Classic WoW stuff. He thinks they're the strongest world PvP class. So if you're one of those people like me that PvE to PvP, don't worry about it, fam. Just support the raid best you can, then go out there and play red or boomkin or whatever your heart desires.
Yep. Like, if you're going.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, as a ret paladin, if I wanted to raid and just get PvP gear as a paladin, I wanted to be ret, like, I would get a nightfall. I would keep that debuff up. I would cleanse people. I would make sure my buffs are always up. There's so many paladins who just like forget to buff or just don't, or are lazy about it, or who knows what.
Especially ret.
I would support the raid. Yeah, right, especially ret. Those 3 things I just mentioned, like cleansing, buffing, nightfall, none of those things require consumables. I'm not saying don't ever bring consumables to raids, but I would invite a ret paladin who did all those things, who cleansed people immediately when they needed to, who buffed when they're supposed to, put nightfall off. I would invite you to any raid. I would give you, you know what I mean? Absolutely. And if you don't want healing gear, but you're like, oh, I want, priority on 2-handers, you're not healing gear, like, we could work something out. So it's not as, if your end goal is PvP, absolutely, there's ways to go about that while still not being a burden to your raid, or just not contributing at all,
Yeah, I really like what Egregious said, that I think, right? Kargoz, about how, you should look at your raid, like, especially look at it as, like the healer's mana pool, not just your mana pool, because so often we get healers in there that are just trying to snipe heals, or trying to, like, you shouldn't be, like, you should be working together. If you see someone throwing at a big heal, don't throw out a flash. If you're a paladin, like a flashlight, to just snipe it. Like, let him use his mana so that you can conserve your mana for when you need to heal. Like, don't just go there to try to top the meters, because that's not what it's about. It's about trying to work together as a unit. That's what raiding's about, especially in vanilla, man.
And the thing about meters too is that for DPS meters, typically if you're on the top of the DPS meters, you're pretty much doing what you're supposed to. Like, there's some ways to cheese it that aren't, productive to the raid necessarily, but for the most part, if you're high DPS, you're doing good. Healing meters, on the other hand, if you're trying to top the healing meters constantly, chances are you're not doing what you're supposed to as a healer. Yep. You're not healing who you're supposed to. You're not healing when you're supposed to.
Not dispelling when you're supposed to.
Not dispelling, exactly, because dispelling, you don't get plus healing for dispelling. So it's a very different thing for healers. Don't pay too much attention to the meters. It's exactly, if your only goal is to top meters as a healer, your chances are you're not going to heal properly.
But for real though, how are those healing meters looking in next though? How are those healing meters looking though?
priests and paladins are sometimes I see priests on top, sometimes I see paladins on top. Occasionally I see a druid on top. There's this druid Taladriel, not Taladriel, different druid.
Oh, he's made that known, dude. That he gets that all the time, dude. Yo, Taladriel, it's funny,
right? So I used to raid with Taladriel Nax, and he went from a priest to a druid actually, which it's pretty interesting. I've known some people who go from one healer to the other, which, you know, I want to sit down and talk to him one of these days and like, oh, you know, why'd you switch from one healer to the other? Same role. But he went from a priest to a druid main, and yeah, he was top or near the top on druid all the time.
That's awesome, dude. I fucking love that.
That's dope. That's dope, man.
I love healing, man.
I mean,
healing's fun. I do it a fair bit myself. I will say, until like several months ago, it was the first time I started using mouse over macros for healing on raid frames, and that was a game changer for me. I liked healing, but I didn't love healing before I started doing that.
Yeah. See, you know, I just wanted to say the one thing you were saying before, like, especially so many fights where like, oh my god, look at this person's healing. Like, look, he did like no to the spell part of recount. Yeah, he did 74 dispels that fight. Oh, it's like, dude, it's not just about healing, or it's not just about this. Like, there's so many, you know, other, like, usually when it comes to like dispel fights, there's other things going on in the fight that, you know, you have to be aware of, especially like if you're a raid leader, if you're, you know, looking at people's performance. Don't just look at the meters, especially if it's like, you know, top healing, or you're looking at over healing done or anything like that. Like, you gotta look at the other things that are going on.
Looking at healing meters is it can be inaccurate.
One thing I'm curious about is how the meta shifts when you're progression versus like speed running raids. I've never speed runned a raid like on really trying to pump with everybody and everybody going in there super high speed. Is it are the healers, you know, super offensive and stuff? Are they? I mean, they just trying to. It's fascinating to me.
In our Nax speedrun, at the very bottom of the meters below the tanks, there were the priests because they smited quite a bit. For speedrun, not only are like all the healers also flasked and they have, you know, 30 mana pots in their bags and ready to pop them whenever. So not only are they more prepared, but again, since things are dying so much faster, mana's not as much of an issue, if any.
Right.
Excuse me, especially when you have, you know, mana pots in a flask. So healers are just like in our speedrun, most of the healing the paladins did was holy light, not flashlight. Flashlight's what you typically use because it's very low mana cost and it's you can sustain people generally. But when you have tanks dual wielding, wearing threat gear because the DPS is so off the hook, in like the Nax speedrun, like we almost never put on a shield. Like we pretty much stayed dual wielding just because we trusted healers. They were bombing big heals on us. You're spamming holy light, you're spamming grid max rank gritty heal. There's no reason to downrank if, again, the only reason you downrank is sometimes to increase the speed of the heal, like in Druid's case. Yeah. But for the most part, downranking is to save mana.
Yep.
And if people are if bosses are dying so fast, you're not really downranking at all, if at all. So healers just spam heals. Cool. Sometimes priests, if there's not a lot of. Sometimes there'll be bosses where only the tank's taking damage and the paladins can keep them up. So yeah, priests are smiting. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
Helping damage.
What would be your favorite raid to tank?
Favorite raid?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Nax it's stressful but very exciting. Molten Core is really chill. You know, Molten Core, if you just like want to relax. BWL is a lot of fun. There's some, even at like high gear levels, there's some hard.
Pretty much all of them.
It's hard to answer. Yeah, pretty much all of them. There's different things I like about all of them.
Yeah, that's cool.
What's your favorite raid fight then? That's a hard one too, I know, but
it's a raid fight.
We'll say as a feral tank first, you know, because it might be
as a feral tank. I really like Veil, just because you can. Yeah, you can go off the chain.
I hated
That's a fun fight for healers too, man. Just going.
I hate it so much.
There's so many fights I like. Again, it's such a hard question to answer.
Yeah, I know. It's a hard one. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Veil's the reason I started stressing for being a tank. I really hated Veil with a passion. Yeah, I didn't like tanking him, but I was too young.
Veil's also a great fight to train your healers to, because there's no mana on that fight. You have infinite mana, so it's a great way to train your healers to, you know, heal preemptively. Don't be afraid to use max rank heals.
Yes,
you know, all that threat. It's a Veil's a great teaching tool for people. For,
it is,
you know, concepts. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Very fun fight. Yeah.
I don't know. It was so hard to switch tanks. Like, I don't know how it works
Well,
now.
and
But
check this out. If your DPS is fast enough, you don't have to. He'll die before he kills the first tank, or like
Yeah.
right as he kills the first tank.
thing is,
So that's
in 2005 it wasn't fast enough. So
and that's like one thing about that is like I hear people even today. I heard someone say like I don't care about speedrunning. You don't care how long the kills take. Yeah, if you're struggling on Veil because your tanks are just dying or not able to hold secondary threat, imagine if your DPS was high enough to where you didn't have to tank transition. That would make the fight that much easier. And so that's there's a lot more of the argument of good DPS besides clearing faster. Like I don't care if the raid takes a couple hours. I have time, fine. But if the higher DPS is, the easier the fights are. The less your healers will go.
Very true.
You'll skip certain mechanics sometimes. It's just there's a lot more to it than just being done faster.
So one dude summarized his whole vanilla experience to me the other day. He said, the only thing I remembered from vanilla WoW was don't start DPSing till there's 3 Sunders.
Yeah.
If tanks are playing properly, man, and at each stage of the game, you can kind of probably envision the phases. Do you need a second?
Sometimes the thing about Sunders too is if people are playing properly, all the DPS warriors will hit Sunder first, because the faster the boss has 5 Sunders up, the more threat the tank will generate, the more DPS people will do. So if you're waiting for 3 Sunders, well, it's down 5 Sunders instantly, so you can't go off that. But just kind of watch your threat meter sometimes. Again, especially with the parry, 14% parry. Yeah, the tank might need a second. It might just be bad RNG. No matter how good you are, your first few attacks might get parried. You see what I'm saying? So just be smart. Watch the threat meter. If you open up with a crit, maybe chill for a second. Be ready to pop. There's a consumable called Limited Invulnerability Potion.
Oh yeah.
That gives you. It's a 6-second bop essentially. You don't drop threat. Your threat doesn't change, but as long as you have that debuff, or that buff rather, you won't get targeted.
Yes.
So if you pull aggro, you hit that button quick enough, you hit your lip, he'll turn back to the tank. And then if in 6 more seconds before it wears off, if you don't DPS at all, or if you DPS a little bit, the tank should have threat by then. You know what I'm saying? So if you're a DPS who wants to go ham right away, just be ready to, or if you're a rogue, be ready to vanish. If you're a hunter, be ready to feign death. Just be aware.
Yep.
But yeah, you can still DPS pretty much instantly. If you're aware of things like that.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Have fun playing Warlock, Kargoz.
Well, that's my favorite freaking candy to eat in the raid now. Even yesterday, I was like, dude, limited
lips.
Dude, lip is like gonna save you so much. Swiftness potion and lip are my favorite things as Warlock, dude. Okay, so you're going Horde. So okay, he told us before the stream. You guys didn't hear it, but the vast majority, was it all, or is it the vast majority of your experiences on the Alliance side, right? Or
correct?
Okay.
Very, very vast majority of experience.
Okay.
I played Horde for about a month, but
okay.
Besides that, yeah.
So you're kind of in uncharted waters here, going on the Horde side. How do you feel about that? I mean, do you think maybe you can outline some of the differences, because a lot of people aren't in the loop with this stuff between Horde and Alliance, tanking, itemization, playstyle, all that type of stuff. There's a lot to dig into. So
there's a few different, there's some Horde exclusive items, mainly pre-bis stuff. Like I'm talking like maybe 2 or 3 items.
Yeah, like the trinkets and stuff, Rune Guard Captain.
Yeah, exactly like that. There's a couple racial differences. For the most part, though, it's Alliance. It's shamans versus paladins. That's the main difference. And you to try and make it short without going too much into detail with paladin and shaman abilities. Like the main thing is like Blessing of Salvation. There's no 30% threat reduction. There is Tranquil Air. However, that's only 20%. Melee will never have it because it's also an air totem. It will interrupt Wind Fury. So, or Grace of Air, even if they're so melee, you're never gonna have Grace of Air totem. Sorry, Wrath of Air totem, whatever the hell is called, Tranquil Air.
Yeah,
something air totem. Melee aren't gonna have threat reduction on Horde really, and if there's only 4 shamans in the raid, you're gonna put them in the melee group first for Wind Fury. So then casters aren't gonna have it either. So threat reduction is just not always a thing on Horde.
It's not reliable.
It's not reliable. Melee tanks also rage generation is different because of Wind Fury totem. That's huge. It really is. It's so huge.
Yes.
Some other little things like paladins have Hammer of Justice, which is a 6-second single target stun. Obviously not everything in a raid is stunnable, but some things are. And a 6-second stun can really be a huge difference. Horde also have like Poison Cleansing Totem, which if there's an AoE poison, which there is like HU and Axe, Poison Cleansing Totem is way better than anything Alliance have. So it's harder on Horde. It's at the highest levels, Horde, I think, come out on top because a lot of the things
No, that's crazy.
so check this out, just to try to sum this up.
That's crazy.
Threat is, even at a very high level, threat's not an issue.
You're saying like speedrun Nax, Horde have the edge?
I'm talking like speedrun Nax.
You
like,
heard it first.
I can
Alliance,
believe
get out,
I can believe
Alliance,
that.
dude.
Threat becomes a lot less of an
yeah.
issue because of just the tanks are generating so much threat. Paladin mana efficiency is not a factor because things are dying too quick for people to run out of mana anyway. And Horde get like the Wind Fury Totem. Really, Wind Fury Totem's the main reason that Horde just do more damage. Because of Wind Fury Totem. It really makes a difference.
So when it comes to like entry level, like the things that I see, Alliance, like why Alliance is so good, like an entry level raider, obviously you have Fear Ward with your priest, right? Which is you shouldn't
Fear Ward
really
too,
need
yeah.
that, right? But you shouldn't really need that.
But you
if
got
you're
Tremor,
like,
right? You got Tremor?
Well, yeah,
you
you
have
have Tremor, but like for to use it on a tank, obviously or something like
yeah.
that. But you have DI, right? You have Paladin buffs, a Sank, all these things, and I feel like you're right at an entry level. I feel like Alliance is a little bit kind of more
more user friendly, more
more user friendly. But like when you talk, that Wind Fury, I mean, you just can't top Wind Fury. It's fucking, and also I think Chain Heal's really good at a lot of melee.
Chain Heal's really good.
AOE melee fights where a lot of where the melee is getting hit by AOEs like Shaz and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So I think
there's two main things. I want to talk about improved land hands for a second. That's a 30% increased armor or buff for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
When a paladin uses land hands, Horde don't have that.
Interesting. Oh, damn.
First of all, not all paladins use it. Good guilds use it like for a boss fight. For certain boss fights, you'll have the paladin buff the tank. That's not always used though. So I mean, it's good, but it's not always utilized.
Yeah.
Shamans, on the other hand, get the same. They get Ancestral Fortitude, which is the same thing as Inspiration for priests.
Yeah.
When they crit, it's 25% more armor. So you gotta think for Horde, you're only gonna have 1 or 2 Druid healers in a raid typically. So almost all of your healers on Horde can give the tank 25% more armor. So that buff is gonna be almost permanently on the tank on Horde.
That's actually really cool. Is that a big deal as a tank? Is that a big deal?
Yeah,
That's a really big deal.
Armor is, especially when you don't have a shield on, like drinking Greater Stone Shield pot where you have 2,000 more armor. Plus the inspiration buff, those are huge deals.
25% is huge. Dude.
Yeah,
That's
dope. That's dope.
That's why sometimes I'll spam rank like lesser heal rank 1 or tank goes in try to get the inspiration.
That's a good idea.
Yep.
If those two things didn't exist, if Stone Shield didn't exist, and if inspiration didn't exist, I would say dual tank might not be viable, just because.
Damn. Oh shit.
So those are two very big things.
Even Ale's selling out, dude. Alliance easy mode confirmed. He's going Horde this time, dude. Ale's he's done, dude. He's going red, dude. Oh,
Wait, so you say dual wheel tank is basically not as viable for Alliance as Horde?
Well, you can also on Alliance you can always do improved land hands, and Paladins they're better main tank healers than Shamans anyway, mainly because they're a lot less mana intensive and they're not focused. Shamans also have to drop totems sometimes. You also have to use global cooldowns. Ideally, and also like in a speedrun guild, I'll give you another example. If totems last like 2 minutes typically, if you drop them before the fight and the boss dies before the totems expire, you don't have to put them back up during the fight, which takes several seconds to put them all back up.
Depending, and sometimes you have to go to the tank to drop down wind.
Exactly. So if on Horde again, when you get up there, when your kill times are really fast, that problem goes away. Shamans don't have to redrop totems, which Paladins never have to do. They just buff and then heal. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying. Also, Kano's in here. He's saying, I mean, this is kind of a meme. He was saying, Horde can get Paladin buffs. You can do your whole. It's kind of a meme though, right? But
but for one fight maybe.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
one fight.
If you mind control, so
yeah,
you can technically.
That's why priests are amazing again.
Yep. Priests are dope, dude. That's so refreshing to hear you say that. I mean, you get a lot of people. And it's cool that in 2019 we're still going back and forth on this, right? But most of the people you talk to will tell you Alliance is better in vanilla, and they'll say that they're easier to execute on in PvP. Paladins are so good and stuff. And now you're telling me at like the tippy top of the iceberg, speed running Nax, Horde can potentially have an edge. It's so cool to hear that. It's like
I think so. And speed running for any, not just Nax, for any raid. I think Horde will have the edge if everyone's playing at the best of their abilities.
Yo, another one too. I'm interested. So, you've heard of Lestor? You probably maybe heard of him, Skarm.
Yes, I know Lester.
Yeah, he's a friend of the channel. He comes on the shows a good amount. He has like everything on Paladin. He like has all gear on Lightbringer and stuff. Pretty much he said something that shocked me one time, and it stuck with me. I just say it all the time now because it's just so interesting to me. People say chain healing is the only smart healing in the game, which is kind of true in the most literal sense. But he was saying that if threat, isn't an issue for whatever reason, like if threat isn't going to, be super impactful in the fight, that salvation isn't the best buff in the game. The best buff in the game is, yes,
Kings.
What's Sanctuary Light?
He said Sanctuary. He said Sanctuary. What do you think about that, though? He said Sanctuary. He said that the difference when you look at the overall damage taken on a raid, with and without Sanctuary, that it's massive and it's a guaranteed value, that there's no user error there. It's value you get every time. What do you think about that?
I don't know if it's massive. That's debatable because it reduces up to 24 damage. So it's more like 15 to 20, I think, typically per hit. So, I mean, depends on the raid. Like on Saffron, where everyone's taking frost damage every second, then yeah, it would make a difference. So again, it depends on the fight, depends on the raid. And technically, yes, if threat's not an issue at all, salvation technically does nothing. Because the only thing it does is reduce threat. It doesn't give any other kind of buff.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, whereas Sanctuary it might be a small buff, but it's still a buff nonetheless. But also for that, if
sacrifice too, though, blessing of sacrifice.
Sacrifice is nice for certain situations as well. But of course, if you have 5+ paladins in the raid, then everyone can have every buff. So if you have enough paladins, that becomes a non-issue.
Dude, that's my new go-to. People be like, yo, paladins. Be like, dude, we can get the paladin buffs, man. We can get the paladin buffs. Like, even if it's a meme, because we can technically do it, it matters.
Alliance can't get totems.
Exactly, they can't get totems.
Yeah. We'll have to have some slave paladins up.
Exactly.
With us all the time that we just mind control, bring them outside of the raid to have them.
They're part of the guild on the other faction. All they do is get mind controlled.
I knew a guy on Lightbringer. This is when BWL was current content. He was the GM of a horde guild. He was the warrior main tank of that guild, and he had a paladin alt, which it'll be a lot easier. It'll be harder on classic to do that because you have to have 2 accounts presumably. You can't just roll both factions on the same server or get free accounts. But he had a paladin alt, and before Vale, when they were progressing on Vale, he would give all of his DPS warriors salvation. He's like, I'm not fucking doing that fight without salvation. So he logged on his paladin and mind controlled each warrior 1 by 1, gave him salvation on his paladin for doing Vale.
Wow.
That's legit. And for progression, when minutes matter, that's not completely irrelevant. That's something that can happen.
Yeah, if you can find a paladin and do it, then it's
it's almost the real vanilla playstyle for the paladins. They used to stand out of the fight and rest people. So
because paladins were only until 1.9. I played a paladin before. Each buff was 5 minutes only. There were no greater blessing. There was actually a talent to make salvation 15 minutes.
Really?
Yeah, I'm serious.
Oh my god, that's crazy.
It was a different game.
Bro, I'm pretty sure I played a paladin. My first 60, as my chat knows, I got exposed at my wedding because Navik talked to the boys that I played classic with, and they were asking my groomsman Max. They were like, he was asking all about me, like how I was in vanilla and stuff. And I was a fucking noob in vanilla, man. But I played my pally was my first 60, and I had such a bad time playing it because I thought I was gonna be some DPS like legend. But at the time, all I did was buff and stay out of combat to res people. That was my playstyle as like a little 16-year-old kid or 14, whatever old I was. And I'm like, dude, this is so whack. All I'm doing is rezzing people and buffing people. What is going on? I got it.
I was jealous. I had to do things as a tank. I mean, I had stress. You got gear for doing nothing.
Yeah.
I'd spec Holy kind of early on in my paladin and started making 5-man groups. And I had people on numerous occasions tell me, like, we'd fill the group and they wouldn't see a priest or a druid even, and they would say, who's the healer? And I'd say, me. And they say, well, you're a paladin. You can't heal this by yourself. We need a priest to help you. I swear to God.
Oh my God.
People didn't know what the fuck paladins did.
Back in the day. It's true.
Wow.
It's true.
This is crazy. Yeah, before the revamp, man.
Yeah, this is before the revamp.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's very true. So you did. What was your history with classes, man? Did you play Pally? Were you always a tank, or what happened? With you?
I played Paladin first. Actually, I have let me see if I'll show you guys a screenshot if I have it. I played a Paladin first. I got Quellsarar on my Paladin. I actually farmed it. It dropped. I have a screenshot right here. I'll show in our little call. I decided I wanted to tank, right? And my Paladin's my only 60. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna tank. I farmed Quellsarar. There's some drama, even though I told the warrior in the run, like, I'm gonna roll on this. And I won it. and I got Quellstar. Patch 1.9 came out because I'd heard patch 1.9 get leaked at the time, saying like we're revamping everything, we're adding a lot of stuff to protection. I'm like, okay. And patch 1.9 came around. I, was running I didn't really know what I was doing back then, granted, but I'm like, this feels terrible. I'm like, paladins suck. So I rolled a warrior like the next day, and I leveled it to 60. That was my first. I'd only killed like a few bosses on my paladin. Like I killed a few bosses in ZG and Lustron. That was it ever. And so I really started raiding on my warrior, and I became the main tank of a new guild. We got all the way through AQ, or not through AQ. We started in AQ. I ended up, that guild kind of fell apart. I joined a different guild. I ended up server transferring at one point to a real life friend server, and did 8 bosses and Nax as a tank. That was my vanilla experience. I'd rolled a druid toward the end of vanilla and started doing 5-mans, and it felt good. And I'm like, and I saw the TBC patch notes. I'm like, I'm going to main a druid and see what happens. And it turned out I main tanked all of TBC. Besides Illidan, as a feral druid, and so and then I played a little bit of Wrath of Lich King before I quit. But so that's my my history. I've always tanked. Mainly my main spec as a raid has always been tanking.
Wow,
With some healing and DPS thrown in there.
that's awesome. So, $2 from Lizzie B. Thanks for the noob friendly tank classic schooling. No, absolutely, dude. We are very lucky to have Skarm here, man. All right. So Skarm, man, are you gonna go hard for classic, man? You said rank 14. I mean, okay, that goes without saying. Yeah, you're going hard for classic.
Yeah, I want to. I'm seriously considering it. Yeah.
Was there anything that shocked you about the beta? I know you weren't in it. Was there anything that surprised you, or you think maybe is a bigger deal that isn't being talked about, or is things more or less where you think they should be and are, or what do you think about that?
So for me, still, it's we haven't entered a raid in the beta. We haven't hit 60, so it's you can still simulate all of these things, like just find a mob 3 levels higher than you and this and that. But it's hard to say exactly. I'm waiting for a raid. I'm waiting for a raid just to really make a full conclusion. Other than that, nothing's like the 14% parry thing I didn't know about, but nothing's like caught me off guard in such a way where like, oh, this is what we're doing right now is not going to work on classic because of this change. Like nothing. I haven't seen anything like that yet.
Okay, so like leeway and all these type of things, they don't. Nothing is too.
Doesn't really faze me a great deal.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Makes a lot of sense. All right. So, does have any other questions for Skarm? Def Dunedain, chat.
I would probably go for a while, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we
I'll
should probably run
I'll have to get you on a Def Talk one day, brother. Yeah.
Hey, invite me on. We'll continue this.
Absolutely.
Awesome,
if you guys have any questions for Skarm, anything that's we're not going to get to all of them, but if there's anything that really sticks out as really juicy, we can shoot it at him. I really want to stress the fact that this dude is an amazing content creator. It's a valuable asset to the community, and you really are doing yourself a disservice if you're not following, subscribe to him, all this. If you like my content, you're gonna definitely like his content. So his YouTube is youtube.com/SkarmTank. Just not the tank, right? Skarm Tank.
Yes, one word.
Skarm Tank. Definitely please check this out. He's just dropping knowledge bombs left and right, man. And
Not a real link. I'll get it. Hold on.
oh, my bad. Okay, that's probably not a functional link. Scuff per usual. Type in Skarm Tank. I'm sure it'll come up.
I got it.
Okay, Defcamp's gonna do the hard work.
Okay.
Okay, so definitely follow this dude. Join his Discord too. He's got a Discord. You gonna stream? Have you been streaming? I didn't even check.
I'm saving it for a new PC. I'm thinking at this point I'm gonna get one like week 1 of August, so a few weeks before Classic comes out, and at that point I'll start streaming.
Dope.
Cool.
Okay.
So soon.
So that's.
Yeah, I don't really have a Twitch page yet. I have one, but I don't really. So I might make a new one before I start streaming. So I'm not gonna link that yet.
Okay, there's his Discord.
Yeah.
Discord. So here's his Discord as well, boys. I got the link on this one. He has a rapidly growing Discord. There we go. All right. There we go. So yeah, definitely follow him, guys. Skarm, what's your third favorite class after Warrior and Druid? That's an easy one. You have one?
I have a Paladin. I like Paladins, but I'm also realistic about their shortcomings, I would say.
Okay, so the very first character you ever made was a Paladin?
Correct.
Okay, so I have this theory, chat. I have this theory. Some of you might have heard it before. I feel like the class you chose when you first entered World of Warcraft for the very first time, you didn't know a damn thing about balance. You didn't know what the classes did. You're just you with your intact, childlike sense of wonder, logging into the game, and you're looking at all the races and classes. Whatever you chose there is probably like what you are, man. Like
I had when I first started playing when I was a teenager, I had a real life friend who played Horde. He was telling me a little bit about the classes, but what sealed the deal was a bubble hurt thing. He told me about that, and I'm like, oh, that's the best thing ever. I'm gonna roll Paladin.
Yeah.
So what does that say about me then, Kargoz? My first class was a rogue.
You might be a rogue, dude.
You're a liar and a thief. And you can't be trusted.
You might be a rogue, man. My very first one was a Tauren warrior, and okay, that theory might be true, might be false, but at the same time, there's some truth to it. Like, I think Taurens are dope. I think warriors are dope. They're like big, brolic looking, strong, like, you know, two-handing, wielding guys. It speaks it says something about you. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's some.
I think it definitely spoke of something that was who I was at the time. Definitely a different person for a lot of reasons than who I was back then.
Yeah,
people changed 15 years ago.
True.
Yeah.
15 years ago, people changed.
I was kind of a scumbag back then, so yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
There you
Yeah. Man, all right. So with that, boys, we've been streaming for 2 hours and 10 minutes for the most part right now. We keep the show 2 hours. Dude, it was very nice to kind of really meet you. This is the first time we really actually talked. And stuff,
thanks
man.
for having me on. Yeah, this was
Just really nice.
Surprise. Thank you.
So much fun.
Very informative stream, I think. So
Thanks for coming on at such short notice, man. That means a lot.
For sure.
It really does, man. If you ever need some, ever need any help on anything else too, man, we'll be happy to assist with anything. So
Absolutely.
I'll reach out. Thank you.
All right, guys, say goodbye to Skarm. It was amazing having him. Follow his stuff, man, and we will see you next week on Good Morning Azeroth 26, ladies and gentlemen.
Keep on grinding.
There we go.
See you guys later.
Peace out.